Welcome, everybody, to another Wednesday night. How are y'all doing out there? See some great names in the chat already. Dylan, Kabir, Rachel, Michelle, what's up? Over on the Rockfin side, I see Cody and Artist Seer. What's up, Mari? Very, very fun conversation on tonight. And definitely going to be quite freewheeling. So one thing that, we don't always go into that often in my podcast, but I have a huge fascination with all things fringe. I've been an avid listener of a particular show for over 10 years, Mysterious Universe, and I don't even know I don't even know how you get better than that. Hilarious, well-rounded content that will over time give you an education first class in all the weirdness that may or may not be possible. And I appreciate these topics, even when maybe there's the hint of bullshit or there's, just beyond believability going on, because as you just take in more and more of the accounts, you can expand your imagination on what is actually possible in this reality. And B, you start to see the patterns that will either give you the ring of truth through their consistency or show you the gist of the grift in terms of how people copy off of each other for attention. And I think that there's definitely some of both things going on. There's for sure more possible in this reality than we can imagine. And it always will expand in that direction because this is a mental reality. And nature is to expand. And on the other hand, I think there's many true believers of particular topics in the paranormal who perhaps actually start out with good intentions, sharing what they think is useful information or important without firsthand knowledge of it, then maybe start to weave themselves into the tale, believing their life is a movie or something and justifying it because, well, the people need to know, even if it didn't really happen to me. So I have a lot of opinions about fringe subjects, actually, but I haven't even introduced our guest for tonight. We have Mathieu of the Forbidden Knowledge News podcast, and we had a really awesome time on his show not that long ago. So make sure you go look it up and give him a follow. I'm sure there's going to be something on there that tickles your fancy, whether ET abductions or Bigfoots or what have you. So what's up? Without further ado, Mathieu, how you doing, man?
Hey, Chance, thank you so much for having me. What's up, Slick? Thank you, guys. It's great to be here. Looking forward to this conversation. It's always fun being on the other side of the microphone for a little bit.
Yeah, Gabe, do you have any thoughts on the paranormal fringe world that you want to introduce with?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited that we're taking this turn to this week. It's like one thing I love and I thrive in. You got the cup. He's got the cup. That's great. I completely thrive with permission to speculate. And as long as you can gain permission to speculate with people, it's like they're giving you the steering wheel on their imagination for just a little while. And if people give me permission to be the tour guide in the realm of the imaginary, we're going to have a great time.
Right on.
All right. Well, maybe we should just introduce you a little further. I don't know a lot about you, man. I just had a really fun time talking with you and knew that we should continue this. So
yeah,
tell me about Mathieu.
I am host and creator and producer of Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm just a regular dude. I started blogging on Facebook at about 2018. No, it was about 2016. I started blogging on Facebook just about all the topics I was becoming interested in. That was my kind of awakening period. Then I started researching everything from ufology to occult history, spirituality, all the fun stuff that I cover, conspiracies. And I was just going deep down rabbit holes, and I found out very quick that you can't just talk to everyone about some of these topics. So I started a Facebook blog to vent the energy and information that I was taking in on a daily basis. And it was super fun. But at the time, it was just a hobby, and it's picked up a little steam. People enjoyed my blog. So I decided to do a podcast. And some of the topics I was getting into, I wasn't well versed in. So I decided, why not interview some of my favorite researchers and authors and people I respected that were way more intelligent than me and well versed in some of these topics and have them on my podcast. And I started interviewing some of my favorite people. I eventually got to amazing people like Jordan Maxwell, Billy Carson, David Icke, Brian Forrester, Danny Sheehan. As the list goes on and on of just amazing people that were kind enough to come and speak with me on my little show. That eventually started to pick up steam, and I was able to quit my corporate life sucking job and do this as a full-time gig. And I was living in South Louisiana at the time, had a profound you could call it contact experience. It was a meditative experience where I'm connected with what I understand as my higher self and my spirit guides. And it blew me wide open as far as what I wanted to do with this show and my potential. I just quit my job like weeks after that experience. It was that profound. And I was able to move to Colorado and start doing this full time. At the time that I left, I was making maybe a couple $100 a month off this show. I took out my 401k, which wasn't much, and moved out to Colorado on a wing and a prayer in hopes that the show would take off. And within I don't know, maybe 6 months, we're looking at the revenue and I'm like, man, we can pay our rent with this month. And next month we're like, oh, we can pay our rent and eat food this month. So it's like it just kept getting better and better. And the universe was working with me, man. I took the information that occurred during those profound experiences, and I implemented the suggestions from what I understand as my higher self and spirit guides, and took off and went with it. And the universe apparently rewarded me for it. And here I am now, and I'm producing a documentary right now. The podcast is incredible. It's always top 50 in our category on Apple. We just hit the top 120 in the Apple News commentary. I mean, the Apple News section, which is crazy. We were like beating all the Fox Newses and all that stuff. So it's pretty insane what's happening. And I'm grateful and blessed for it all. It's all surreal. I never expected any of it. And that's where I'm at.
That's wonderful, man. Love the story of taking the leap of faith and seeing how it's actually harder to like drag your feet and pace around at the edge of the cliff than it is to just fucking jump. You know what I mean?
Man. I jump at everything now. I've learned from that. And I also learned that once you take that first step and you show that initiative, it's like you trigger some sort of energy in the universe and it rewards you with 5 extra steps ahead and kind of propels you a little bit. It also sends you what I believe these synchronicities as messages and kind of like a code for you to follow to develop where you want to go and where you want to be. And the universe will continually send you these synchronicities and events and happenings and even people into your life that if you're on the right track and you're trucking out this positive energy and you're doing what you feel your purpose is, I believe you're completely rewarded by the universe, and it will give you a little boost and propulsion in a certain direction, if you know what I mean.
100%, man. 100%. I like this comment. Dig your leap of faith principle of physical manifestation. Congrats, Chris. Totally, man. And congrats on how well the show's doing. I remember how exciting it was to see, the chart rankings on iTunes go up to a certain level and just be like, wow, we're reaching people. It's interesting how few downloads it takes to actually get high up in the ranking at this point, how spread out everybody, like decentralized everybody's information intake is. I think that's why the old dinosaur networks are just totally failing, because they required the big numbers to even operate with their advertising. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat here for everybody. If they want to join our Telegram group, Vibrant Calls, t.me/Vibrant Calls. That's where they can leave us a voicemail or ask questions or send us videos or send us images. And if they're appropriate and they fit the flow, then we'll definitely put them in. The voicemails pretty much always make it in. So wanted to offer that to everybody. I like to have some interactivity on the Vibrants. And Chris, I'm sorry I forgot to tell you that tonight the uniform was a gray tank top. I'm sorry.
I missed the memo on that one. Damn.
We were
Well,
we psychically agreed to it, apparently, me and Gabe.
yeah. Well, I'll have it in my astral body. That's what I'm wearing.
Nice. Chris, what part of Colorado did you end up? Are you in Denver?
I was in Denver when I first moved out here off a suggestion from my producer. It was okay. I'm not a city type of guy, so I moved to northern Colorado, 30 minutes from Wyoming, near the foothills, and it's fucking amazing out here. So I couldn't be
Nice.
happier where I'm at right now.
Very nice. That's great. Yeah. I got some roots in the Boulder, Longmont area myself. So yeah,
it's just so beautiful compared to what I've been used to. I lived in the South my whole life, Louisiana, Florida, and it's beautiful down there. I love it, but it's nothing compared to once you get to this elevation in the mountains. It's breathtaking, some of these locations out here.
Well, speaking of elevated, tell me more about your experience contacting spirit guides or higher self. I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it's a multi-layered experience, to say the least. It started when I had been doing the podcast for a couple of years, and it was pretty popular, it's picking up, but I wasn't really doing anything with it. I wasn't translating into any revenue or way for me to survive. I was still working a corporate job that I absolutely hated. I was slinging TV and internet service and cell phone service for a major corporate company. And I didn't enjoy lying to people. I didn't enjoy the practice. I didn't enjoy anything about what I was doing. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing this. And I knew that I wanted to do this podcasting thing and talk show full time and see where that would lead me. But I didn't know how to make that work. And I was scared and all the normal things and depressed because I couldn't make it work. And it was a rough time for me in general. I was going through a bad relationship, bad enough to where I had to get a restraining order on this chick. And it was not a good time in my life. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go. And I had, at that point, I had no spiritual experiences, no paranormal experience, nothing I couldn't explain, nothing that really connected me to the possibility that there's something beyond myself. I wanted to believe that. That's why I've always been interested in the weird and paranormal and conspiracies and hidden, and that's why I did the show. So I was always exploring that, but never had that real experience. Well, I didn't know what to do, depressed, and I was getting suggestions, meditate, meditate, meditate. And that was just always something that came up. So apparently that was something I was supposed to do. One night I am in my front yard speaking with one of my neighbors, and I was looking up at the sky and I see these streak kind of bright orange lights in a triangular formation. They're slowly going up in the sky and they look like fire. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow. And I'm trying to get my neighbor's attention to look at it, but he's just talking. He doesn't pay attention to anything. And all of a sudden these things just kind of shoot off into nothing. And I was like, damn, that was interesting. I'll file that in the interesting file. I don't know if it was anything unexplainable or what. But, I just kind of forgot about it later and went about my business. And that evening, I don't know if that was connected to anything I'm about to tell you, but it was interesting. It may have been part of the story. It may not. So I start to meditate. I was horrible at it at this time. I couldn't get to a relaxed enough state. My mind was rapidly always just moving. I just couldn't let go. And I would get suggestions on how, and I started taking the suggestions, 432 hertz tones. And the biggest one for that really, I believe, worked for me was something was telling me to get in water or have a part of my body in water. So I was in the tub and I had 432 hertz tones on. And within a very short amount of time, I was more relaxed than ever. And I actually got into a deep, relaxed, meditative state where there was just nothing but peace and just nothingness and blackness. And it felt amazing. And all of a sudden, I feel like my consciousness is just being pulled somewhere. And it's like I'm traveling through like a portal or I don't know. It feels like my consciousness is racing somewhere. And at the same time, I'm absorbing information, just tons of information. And I I couldn't tell you what it was at the time. I just know that it was like I was being downloaded with history of the world, geometry, secrets of the universe. It was all like splashing into my brain. I didn't know what was going on. And I believe that I've unpacked a lot of that information from that time until now. And I'm still probably, because I'll just have these understandings that come out of nowhere. But at the time, it was kind of terrifying. I didn't know what was happening. And then after all this information just kind of rushes into my mind, I'm in another peaceful state, and there's blackness, nothingness. And in my subconscious vision, I can see this blue bright light moving, getting larger and larger, seemingly closer to my wherever I am in this astral state. And as the blue light gets closer and closer, I start to feel this just like amazing, beautiful feeling. And all I can say was love. It was love, but love like I've never felt before. I thought I love mom and dad. I thought, I love, this was something that was such a powerful knowing of what love is. And it was like I was on a drug. It was like amazing feeling. And I knew that it was just instinctively, I knew this was a feeling of love. And then all of a sudden I hear a voice speaking to me, and it was just an amazing instantaneous contact, like conversation, where this voice said hello, and I responded in my mind, and the communication was so instantaneous. Before I could even respond, the other voice was finishing its statement about the question. And it was very strange, but it seemed like such an efficient way to communicate. And then I started to get nervous. I'm like, what's going on? Who am I talking to? This is not me. And I was like, this is not me. And I started to get kind of nervous. I grew up Catholic, and I kind of reverted to some, I guess, childhood dogma or something. And I was like, in the name of Jesus, are you demon? Are you good? And I could just feel like this laughing and love and just beautiful, warm feeling. And it's like, I can hear it laughing. It's like, yes, I'm good. I'm here for you. It's something like, I'm a part of you. This is time for us to have a conversation because you're ready for it. I'm like, okay. So at this time, I'm in my tub in water in this meditative state, and my eyes open, and I thought I had blown out the whole thing. I thought I lost the connection to whatever it is, but I could still communicate with this thing. I was seemingly out of the meditative state, but everything kind of looked a little hazy and a little different. Like, if you've ever done mushrooms and you start to feel that feeling, that's what it kind of felt like when I was up around, walking around my house, and this voice and intelligence is communicating with me, telling me it's time for us to sit down and have a conversation. You've been needing to do this. It's time. There's some things that you want in your life that I can help you achieve, and there's things you need to do first. And there were some of the main messages of what this entity was telling. First was heal childhood trauma, heal all the traumatic events in your life, and get rid of some of this muck and spiritual attachments that are holding you back. That was one of the main things. The other one is quit your toxic job. Quit this horrible job. Doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what money you're making. This is not for you. You need to quit this and go do your podcast. That is what you need to do. And that message was so strong, and it kept reiterating things I needed to do, and that it would be periodically communicating with me to help me achieve some of these goals. And interestingly enough, one of the things that came up in the conversation was psychedelics. I used to do psychedelics as like a teenager, as a party thing, and I hadn't done them for years, hadn't even thought about them. Well, psychedelic magic mushrooms in particular came up, and they were like, they knew for some reason, well, apparently it knew I was interested in moving to Colorado. And it was like the voice was telling me that magic mushrooms were an easier way to facilitate a quick conversation, basically, with this entity. And at the time, I'm thinking this is an extraterrestrial or alien. I have no idea what I'm talking to. I didn't really come to this understanding until like lots of conversations with people and lots of experiences after that with this communication. So I get the understanding that magic mushrooms will help facilitate an easy communication with whatever this is. And that, along with quit your job, heal childhood trauma, get rid of your emotional baggage, and you'll be on your way. That was kind of, that experience lasted for a couple of hours, and the connection with this being just kind of faded away eventually. It was incredible. I still didn't know at that time. I was like, maybe I had an acid flashback. Maybe I'm going crazy. I don't know what's happening right now. So I started reaching out to people, talking to, because I was doing the talk show. I knew a lot of experiencers. I know a lot of spiritual people, and I just started trying to find out what the hell's going on. The next day I wanted to have I was so excited. Like, I need to do this again. I need to know if this is real. Did I do that? How do I do this again? I tried again. I think it was 2 nights I tried nothing. I was just, sitting there just in the water, nothing. Well, it was the 3rd night that I was able to meditate again, and I got to that deep state. And this time it was like I was reliving a childhood memory, and it was very clear and vivid. And I walked through the whole memory, and it was a very traumatic event. That's something that happened to me as a child. And it shook me up, and I processed the whole thing and remembered. And I was like, damn, I can't believe I just remembered that out of nowhere. And all of a sudden I feel the blue light and the love, and this being is there communicating again with me, asking if I was ready for some more conversation, if you were ready to learn more. I was like, yeah, what are you? And I started to get this vision that I was in my subconscious vision. I was somewhere else. I was looking around, and it's like a very sterile environment, gunmetal gray floors, and they had different levels. And I'm opening my eyes again, and I'm in my tub, and I'm looking around, and I close my eyes. Same thing. It's just sterile environment. I could see out windows, and outside the windows, it's like outer space. It looks just like stars in space. And I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of looking around, and all of a sudden I feel love, but it's like I can tell that it's from different beings. I can tell I'm feeling love from something else other than this first guy that I was talking to. And all of a sudden I'm looking around this etheric environment. This looks like a spaceship or something. And all of a sudden these other beings start to kind of manifest and show up in my astral vision. They were like little human hybrid animal human hybrid beings that were wearing these green robes. They were like translucent looking, very regal. I mean, they didn't look like silly, animal. They looked like humanoids, but with these, these distinct animal features at times. Even one that looked like a frogman, and this frogman actually started communicating with me, asked me if I was ready for, to do something in my life. And I wish I could have remembered exactly what the conversation was there, but I was just like bawling, crying at this point because it was so profound. And I'm like talking with these little hybrid animal etheric beings, and they're beaming me love, and they're like walking me through things that I should do to heal my trauma. And I'm kind of reliving a few other events, and it was so profound and amazing. And I'm sitting in the bathtub crying, and eventually this experience kind of goes away. And within about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months of that, that's when I decide that I hadn't had any more experiences for a while. So after 3 or 4 months, I'm just like, I am downloaded. I feel incredible. I hate my job more than ever. Like, I can't even stand being at my job for more than 2 minutes. It's like there was some kind of repulsion there that wasn't there before these experiences. I'd even feel nauseous and sick going there. And eventually I just couldn't. My boss said something to me, and I was like, nope. And I just left. I was like, no, I'm gone. Pulled out my 401k. I was just like, all right, I'm going to do this. And within a few months, I'm off to Colorado. I'm growing magic mushrooms, ready to do some vision quests. And that's where it all started. And then through the magic mushroom vision quests, I gained a lot of other amazing things.
Man, what a good storyteller you are. I appreciate that, dude.
Oh, thank you.
Shoot, there's a lot there to respond to. I had experiences. I've had plenty of experiences with psilocybin. I've been on a like a mycelium phone call before, with people that aren't alive anymore, or like figures that were teachers that I've learned from but are deceased, like from the past. All that is very interesting and possible. Like when we get into the realm of the imagination, there's this idea in the mainstream that imagination is something fake, and there's the capacity for us to imagine things that are fictional to the physical reality. But the truth about imagination is that everything is imagination.
Yes,
like thinking isn't imagining isn't a type of thinking. All thinking is a type of imagining. So I really, really love that. And I know what those epiphanies are like in meditation too, where all of a sudden you have this unraveling of all the great mysteries moment where there's this, aha, the epiphany has arrived. Now I get it. And then like 30 seconds later, you're like, what was I thinking about?
Yeah. That's kind of what it's like, for sure.
I've actually had a little trouble getting into the zone though you're talking about for a couple of years now. And so I'm going to try the water method. That because there's some connectivity to that.
I've always loved water though. I started swimming at like, I don't know, 1 or 2 years old, and always had an affinity towards water, and always just, I don't know, water was always special to me for some reason. So I'm, maybe there's a connection there. I don't know. But
as soon as you mentioned the tub, my mind brought in a million linguistical links into that ingredient of the recipe, and that is the tub is it's the prime ordeal, the first ordeal. It's a birthing ritual. It's bath, tub. That's literally the same word, but either way you spin it. But it also becomes Beth, becomes a house, a vessel, a sacred space. It also means language as well. So the idea that you felt a desire to go into the water to make this communication more possible is like so intuitively impeccable. That's just completely on point.
Let me bring this whole water thing to full circle here, and I'm going to tell you about my most profound psychedelic experience that I've had since I started doing my vision quests, specifically with the intent of communicating with spirit guides and healing childhood trauma and anything that will go along with that. And this happened last year, and like I said, I had grown magic mushrooms for a while. I would do vision quests once or twice a month. And they were not your small microdoses. They were your heroic doses of 5 or more grams. And this time I was with one of my ex-girlfriends, and she is a psychic, and she has done therapy sessions, and she's helped people with traumatic experiences. So we thought, why not take mushrooms together, and maybe we can heal some of our childhood traumas, and she can walk me through some of these experiences. And that's what we did this experience. Well, it turns out she had never done mushrooms before, but she wanted to try it. She started out with just a couple of maybe 1 or 2 grams. And after a couple of hours, I'm dripping balls. I feeling it as I'm almost at the peak of the experience, and she is not feeling anything. She says, I feel a little sleepy. I don't, she was definitely not tripping. She didn't display anything like that. And so I gave her more. By the end of the 3 hours, she had taken about 5 grams for her first experience, and she said that she just felt a little sleepy, and she said she felt connected, like she was able to be in contact with her spirit guides immediately. And there were some strange things that happened that I don't know if it was because I was tripping and these things were experiencing, but she said that they were happening, and she didn't seem to be under these experience. Things like she would tell the radio to lower the music, and it would. And she actually asked it to change the station, and it did. And she said that these things actually happen. Like I said, I don't know, because I was actually under the influence. But what did happen to me was we were walking through a childhood experience. I was reliving it. We got to the root of it, and it was incredible. I felt a release. And I felt amazing for, about 5 to 10 minutes after that whole walkthrough of that experience. Well, right as I'm just like, I feel like I'm ready to wind down, and I thought this was a great experience, and it's towards the tail end of the mushroom experience. I'm talking with her, and what she's saying starts to become stranger and more dark. And it sounded something like, yeah, I found you shortly after you were born. I attached myself to you. I helped you through all your experience. I got you to where you are now, and you don't want me around anymore. You don't love me. And she said that I shit you not, shapeshifted into like this giant reptilian creature, about 6, 7. She even grew. Like, what I understand happened is I had a spiritual attachment that was attached to this traumatic event that did not want to leave, and it took over my perception. And what I saw, what it manifested into, was this giant lizard demon that proceeded to chase me around my house, asking if I still loved it. And my whole house proceeded to change into a dungeon. And look, I've had plenty of psychedelic experiences. I've never had anything like this. I've never had these hallucinations where can't tell what's real and what's not. I thought I had died and gone to hell, literally. I was like, oh, I just died. This is what's happened. The mushrooms are bad. I died. I'm in hell. I have to live with this now. So I didn't know what's going on. I'm running around my house. 7 foot tall reptilian demon that used to be my girlfriend is chasing me around. My whole house has changed. I have mold on my walls. I look outside and the sky is red. It's not blue sky anymore. It's red sky. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like, water. I just came to me, go to the water. I jump in the shower. The shower starts pouring down on me, and I start praying. I'm like, God, help me. What is going on? God, I need you. I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden I feel like this loud rumbling inside myself. And I start to shake, and I hear, you are being deceived. And as that voice came through, I shit you not, I puked up thick black viscous material into the shower. It was like, I wish it wouldn't have gone down I wish I could have saved it just to examine what the fuck this stuff was, because it looked like oil. It was so nasty and black. And I just kept puking it up. And as I was puking it up, the lights were flickering, and all of a sudden, boom, everything's back to normal. My bathroom's back to normal. It's brighter than ever, though, and I feel like amazing. I feel like there's this very powerful, loving presence in the same room with me, and it's incredible. I'm like, what's going on? I feel like I'm just so powerful and amazing. Well, it turns out as I was praying, my girlfriend's freaking out in the other room. She's like, what is... So she starts meditating, and she starts praying. And she says that she sees in her mind's eye like this evil demon reptilian thing attaching itself to me. And she called upon her spirit guides and her angels, and proceeded to banish whatever this thing was. And she said, as she imagined it going through the portal, that's when she heard me puke in the other room. And it was all very, very profound experience. But after that, I felt incredible. Like, I felt like a weight had been lifted that I had been carrying around since my childhood. It was amazing. So from what I understand, it was like this spiritual attachment didn't want to leave and kind of took over my perception. And what better time to do that when I'm tripping balls, and just had like an exorcism type experience,
Dude, yeah. Honestly, the reason I stopped doing big doses of mushrooms, or even so, there's a couple things. Like, first of all, the not feeling it thing.
Well, I have to respond to the chat real quick. Yes, I broke up with her. She's actually not my girlfriend anymore.
Yeah, she's got to go. But I've had the experience of doing a psychedelic while I'm already kind of like pretty elevated in my, I don't know, vibration, or expanded in my consciousness, and not really having much of an effect or any effect. So, but anyway, why I stopped doing mushrooms is because I was seeing and being touched by and like being freaked out by people that no one else could see.
Oh man.
You know, and it was kind of like the ghost in Mario, where if you look at it, it stops moving, but if you look away, it comes at you. But it was the opposite. If I looked at it, it would come closer. If I looked away, it would stop. And I had enough of that. So
that's crazy. Yeah, I haven't done mushrooms since that experience. So I think I'm good for a while, but every experience, no, I take it back. I have done mushrooms since, and that experience and everyone before was a profound, beautiful experience. I mean, I'd have my hero's journey where I'd have to face my demons and relive all these horrific experiences as a child. And I would go back to these. And then once I'm able to conquer that and relive it and feel good about it, it was like the experience was amazing and beautiful. And that's when the spirit guides would show up and be like, all right, you did that. Let's talk some more. And we'd have some more conversations. So that's the way those kind of vision quests usually went.
Well, so man, the really interesting part of this is the water part. I've been thinking about water in its relation to the savior or the mediator in all the different versions of mythology, whether it's Jesus or Mercury or Hermes or Odin, what have you. There's always this connection to water, and they call in the occulted or the esoteric version of the ancient mystery schools, they were referring to these savior deities and their different incarnations in the world as like the god or the lord of the seculum, which means the lord of the current age or the next age. And in a way, actually, that means that they're an antichrist because they're the next Christ or the replacement Christ. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding about the idea of antichrist. But that's a side subject maybe we'll go into. But anyway, one of the names for these seculum or world ages that maybe are 600 years, 608 years, 650, depending on the culture, the time period, and their knowledge of astronomical cycles and what they believed about them in their calculations, they would call this age the Neros or the Neros. And you know, you have one of the versions of it being Bacchus. He's related to water. You know, Jesus with his baptismal stuff, water, John the Baptist and water. It goes on with the connections to water. And I've been studying Greek lately, and I found out that the word for water in Greek is Nero, the exact same word as the world age that is part of the secret. Like, you won't even find receipts on this word Nero referring to seculum. If you Google it, you know, you'd have to be a pretty good Google searcher, maybe searching the Sacred Text Archive or something specifically for a word match. But anyway, it makes me wonder if in the bathtub, what you talk to was whatever this being is that is the mediator between humanity and the Most High. And that it's a part of you. Yeah, but it's a part of all of us. Because I've heard so many stories like what you're talking about, where they meet the guide, not like a guide, but like the guide. I know somebody that got struck by lightning and then started being visited by Thoth, and all of a sudden knew a bunch of like alchemical shit that they hadn't studied, and just had to put it into paintings. Like all of a sudden they could paint like a motherfucker. I should show some of her pictures. But anyway, the last thing about all the stuff you're talking about that I want to respond to is I have been very, I was a big Kool-Aid drinker when I started researching fringe and esoteric and metaphysics and all that. And so I've kind of had a pendulum swing into high levels of skepticism, because there's a lot of just parroting that goes on without firsthand knowledge. And then we're talking about subjective experiences. So like, where do I draw the line? And so I kind of just have been highly, highly skeptical, but highly skeptical of anything that's not our shared consensus, sense-based reality. That I still back that up, that we gain knowledge through our senses. However, I was talking to Mario on the previous episode of InnerVerse. Great dude. You would probably love to have a talk with him. And Mario Garza, Symbolic Studies. And we were talking about the Qlipothic, or the underside, the reverse negative mirror image of the Kabbalistic idea of the tree of life. And he was referring to this as like universe B. And after the conversation, I had this flash of like, I don't know, it felt like an epiphany, realizing that how nature designs things is always in this binary. You know, it starts with 1, but then it multiplies into 2 and then to 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. So all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, there is reason not to maybe assume, but to be very open to the possibility that whatever our physical construct reality is has some kind of counterpart, you know, some kind of mirror image. And maybe that's what we're able to sort of slip in between at certain points in our mind. And like you were, you were seeing with the hell version of your apartment or your house or whatever, you were seeing where you're at, where Chris was at in universe B, you know, something.
Maybe
I don't know.
so.
Just really wild though.
Yeah, it could be. I love to consider that. I think that there are that we do live in a dualistic type of reality, but I think there is multiple layers, and that there are probably multiple types of realities. But when we're looking at lower and higher dimensions, there are probably multiple layers of lower and multiple layers of higher types of dimensions. But I think that there's also this underlying type of energy or force or ether that can be manipulated either way to the positive or negative. And this is the force that dictates everything that surrounds us at all time, that we interact with, that we would call magic, that we would manipulate for anti-gravity, 0 point energy. This force that is, I believe it could also be just pure consciousness. And that even what we understand as paranormal is this energy, this pure consciousness, maybe manifesting or interacting with us based on our perception or awareness, but it could swing to the positive or negative depending on either our intent or what our interaction with, or the collective, where the collective is. So it's very interesting to consider, though.
Yeah, man, the water ingredient that set me off on in so many ways. I J and B are the symbol of initiation in so many ways, but it's John the Baptist is one of the strongest examples of how J and B is an initiation. It's also a 1 and a 2, which is the first. All journeys begin with the first foot forward. So the matrix is measured in 12s. So all things 1 to 2 are the first step forward. And so when you mentioned using the water as a conduit and then coming out feeling purified and redeemed, these are we use biblical religious language to describe this what is a very modern experience. You know what I mean? But I definitely see a lot of strong parallels with the idea of a baptism. If you supercharge it with anticipation, if you fast beforehand, if you do it on the right day that your ancestors did it on the same time of year with the exact same angle of the sun, all of those programs are waiting to be awakened inside of us, Yeah. And so
It makes me think of the Emoto experiments with the water and the different frequencies. And I've had multiple experiences, psychedelic experiences, where I'm in water and I go through a death and rebirth type of process. And that has actually happened multiple times. And then you consider the aspect that certain native cultures believe that there is a spirit in water that carries everything. It carries the memories of all of our history and our ancestors through the streams and shores. So I think there's definitely a very powerful aspect to water and the way we interact with it, and the way that it's been tampered with and abused. And the bottled water that we get and that we drink out of their tap water and the fluoridated water is our life. It's everything. We are made up of water. The universe is supposedly made up of water. Everything is mostly water in our reality. So why wouldn't this water hold life force and memories and consciousness and be one of the most powerful forces that we can interact with?
Right. And let's take it to another level, like real subtle, uh, intuitive level. Before there was the techne that gave man a mirror, you had to go to a puddle of water to see your own likeness. So the water is the original twin, the original twin. Before we had all the bling, we had a little standing pool of water, a still pool of water. And now, uh, I have to mention, I just learned this week that Eros, some people and some cosmologies, he was the first god made. He was
protogonos, firstborn.
Yes.
Yeah, Eros. It's the same word as Nero. Whoever
Right.
whoever the Nero is, or the Lord of the Seculum, is
Yep.
the reincarnation of the firstborn of the first cause.
Yes. So Eros is born and he's weak. He doesn't progress. He stays young. He's not challenged. He's just going to stay the same. It's some Kurt Kallenbach stuff going on here. That everybody's only 1 year old because they celebrate their birthday every year. They stay 1 year old. His parents consult the oracles and they say he needs a brother to bring him forward, to challenge him so he can strive. And so I never knew until this week Eros has a twin brother named Anteros. In Anteros, he is considered like the god of unrequited love. And so his name, Anteros, some people think it means like anti-eros, right? The anti-love. But it also means, this is fascinating, this linguistical, it also means counter love. And if you keep track of his responsibilities, he's a counter. He's literally keeping tally. Oh, I loved you more than you loved me, so you owe me one love now. So he's a love counter. Also, he's keeping a tally on what love is all about. And I think it's Eros, Anteros, Anteros.
But I mean, that's philologically like Antares too. Interestingly,
Totally.
the royal star.
Yes.
I just happen to have. I'm not even kidding. I just happen to have this mosaic of Eros from Antioch open when you started talking about Eros.
That's beautiful. Joke. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there, that the twin idea literally is born out of water. And when you look in the eyes of your fellow man, you're looking into a pool of water and you're seeing, every time you're seeing yourself, but on a level that is subconscious, it's subliminal. So I just wanted to put the water in the twin, and the fact that I just learned that some of these gods also had twins all along. Pretty profound, pretty fun stuff.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Wow.
So the other thing that was open on my tabs is this King Shupiluliuma from ancient Turkey, like around the roundabouts of Antioch. Gabe and I've been talking about Antioch today. But look at this guy's hat. He looks like a mushroom. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, man, mushroom, I think psychedelics are amazing. I don't recommend anyone do psychedelics. For me, it was a profound tool for my mental health and healing childhood trauma. But if you think of like some of the symbology of things like Super Mario Brothers, he eats the mushroom, he grows powerful, he is able to battle the evil forces and win the game. So it's very interesting, some of the symbology, of course, that you've seen throughout even ancient cultures, like you were just showing. I think that there is really something to opening our consciousness and giving us the access to things that we didn't have before using psychedelics. I remember the first time I did LSD, and this is the first time I've ever done any type of psychedelics. I was like 16. The next day I felt like something was different in my brain. I felt like I had a different outlook on the universe, and everybody that I talk to who has had psychedelic experiences has this similar sentiment that something changed in them after. They have a different perspective of what reality is. So I think that they're given to us for a reason. If like I said, they're probably not for everybody, but I think that when used correctly, we can unlock parts of our consciousness that may have been dormant for a little while.
So, in this context of dormant parts of our consciousness, which is our ability to perceive, our field of what we can feel, and seeing little hybrid guys in green robes and all of that. So, what do you think in terms of, can we talk a little bit about what you've learned from researching the contact phenomenon? Like what I see going on here is so much similarity to fairy folklore and all that, and even ideas of like demons or what have you, which is a misunderstood idea from the ancient world. Demons refer to the spirits of the dead, not infernal spirits per se. But do you think that there's maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that going on, or that
I think there's probably two different sides of this. There's the consciousness aspect where, in my belief, what we're interacting with is pure consciousness or source energy or some sort of intelligence that is interconnecting everything that we can gain access to through ourselves. And that could include a whole range of phenomena from what people consider extraterrestrials, ghosts, interdimensional beings, whatever these conscious intelligences. In my belief, it's all kind of the same thing, and it can manifest to each person differently. And then they have what I believe is the physical intelligence operation side, or the military industrial complex fucking with people side, which is basically a psychological operation to perpetuate either the extraterrestrials, put that into the consciousness of people, or just misdirection in general. Well, for whatever reason, I think it's a psychological operation. I do believe people have genuine contact experiences and interactions with non-human intelligences. But when it comes to these physical experiences where people are being taken and having things shoved up their butt, and they are claiming to being taken off planet and ships and all these incredible experiences, I believe that it may be either psychosis, or these people are being taken by military abductions, by high level intelligence people, or just maybe they have very advanced mind control capabilities. Have you guys read Chameleon, the book by Robert Guffey?
No.
All right. Well, I'm having Robert Guffey on next month. This book is it's supposedly a true story about a gentleman who was being illegally surveyed and harassed by 3-letter agencies and military industrial complex because they claimed he stole high advanced military goggles or something stupid like that. And they wanted him to admit it and return them, and he wouldn't. On top of that, he's a heroin addict. Okay. So none of his stories could be taken seriously. He was just like a junkie. So according to him, they started to harass him. First, it started by gang stalking people outside of his house, phone calls, threats. People would meet with him and say, "Are you ready to give us the goggles yet?" Just Men in Black type situations, harassment. Then it turned really dark. He said they would start sending, he called them UFOs, to his houses. But keep in mind, this is in the 90s. This is like mid 90s. He said they were sending UFOs to his houses, which were actually drones. We didn't know we had these advanced of drones back then, but apparently we did. They were sending drones to his house that could mimic UFOs. They had some sort of advanced cloaking technology that they would send people into his house with this cloaked like shit all over them, and like push stuff around, make him think he'd have poltergeist, push him, touch him. And it was just actually people in this cloak technology. And he'd have like an agent meet him the next day after an experience, be like, "You ready to give up those goggles yet?" And he'd be like, no, I know it's you doing this. And like they got weirder and weirder. He'd start looking out his window. He said he'd look out his window one time and he saw a planet, like an extra planet in the sky, and just a different landscape, like he was on a different planet. And he ran outside and everything was normal. Everything's like fine. He runs back to the window and it's like this fucking planet outside. They just kept going on and on with this harassment. And this was in the 90s.
I think I heard this story on MU.
Imagine what kind of technology they have now and what they're doing to people on a regular basis and what they could possibly do on a global scale when it comes to deception with some of this stuff, you know?
Okay. I'm going to put a little, attach a couple cliff notes to that story about seeing a planet outside the window and trying to go away and come back and seeing it still there. Yeah. That has historical echoes in really significant places.
Really?
Yes. And so the first one is Napoleon is reported to have had the skinny red man who would visit him and give him advice. And he would take the skinny red man's advice, or thin red man. They've actually kind of sifted this story to, like, they've thinned it out on the internet over the years. So it's actually harder to find. But he would take this little red man's advice and he would always win. But as soon as he stopped taking advice from the little red man was the decline of his success. In the time that he stopped taking that advice, one of his advisors came into his room, and Napoleon was staring out the window and was like in a daze. And the advisor started to leave. He like said what he needed to say and tried to walk out. And Napoleon was like, "Hey, did you see that star, that brilliant star, brighter even than the sun? Do you see how close it is? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And he's like describing the psychedelic vision out of the window.
Yeah.
And so we get the report from the messenger. We don't get it from Napoleon's lips. This is like, a witness account. Well, Carl Jung has a defining moment in his career where he's in a psych ward. There's a crazy man standing by a window and he's walking past the crazy man. The crazy man's like, hey, come here. I got to show you something. And the crazy man like speaks this poem about what he's seeing on the horizon. And it has to do with how the sun is not as far away as they say it is. It might actually be closer. And can you see how this star off to the side is actually about to consume the sun? It's like this weird poem. Well, Carl Jung just kind of put that in his pocket for later. And it was later on, he's reading the archives of history and he finds this random description that's like immortalized in culture. And this guy in the hospital had no access to it. None. And Carl Jung was converted when he found that guy's poem in the historical annals. So I just wanted to kind of put these little cliff notes for you when you go and talk to that guy, because that vision out of the window has a lot of very powerful echoes in very like monumentally historic altering events.
That makes me think of, how did we get this? If indeed that was the truth, that they were illegally surveying and harassing this guy with extremely advanced technology that was 50 to 100 years ahead, where did we just come up with this stuff, or were we being communicated with?
Okay, I forgot to say that part. I'm glad you asked that to bring it back, because there's a theory out there. I have not gotten into it, but the theory is that Carl Jung was actually a targeted individual. And that his entire psychedelic movement that he is the figurehead of was fabricated.
That's another thing. How many people are propped up and given little nudges in certain directions because they're on a certain path, or they are who they are, they're working on something or know something? That's super interesting, man.
Yes. Yeah. And so wouldn't it be something for Carl Jung's like guided, we call it stalker. Isn't that what or targeted individual?
Targeted individual. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carl Jung was like a proto targeted individual. And the results of that are almost laying a path for other people to walk in his footsteps. And so it's very fascinating that here we have a target individual having this vision outside of the window echo.
Yeah. Let me throw down a little bit on this right here. So first of all, there may be some kind of truth to the allegory in the Matrix where the agent can take over certain people and just
I got a story
become,
about that too after. Just
because
remind.
I have had experiences in my life where, like, for example, there was a person who was my friend, but I had a falling out and problems with them. And I was out at this event at like a music festival, and a drunk person came up to me. I was sober, by the way. I was totally sober. And a drunk person came up to me and like got up in my space, and their face changed into the face of this friend I had fallen out with, and got like really close to me, really gave me a really bad vibe. And then he said the catchphrase of that friend.
Damn.
and then he just like slunk off. And it was like, for a moment, he like became whatever maybe is writing on the first guy, maybe it's like some entity that was able to jump between them or something. I don't know. But then there's this idea that there's targeted individuals, gang stalking, and all that. And while I'm super skeptical and hesitant to believe that 3-letter agencies or resources would be spent this way, I also like, there's this element of our economy, especially with the federal government, where by design and by its nature, because of the constant inflation and infusion of money through the credit and debt system, that there needs to always be more and more money spent and thrown at programs and government agencies and all that for the money to get taken back in, by
from what I understand, this dude was like a guinea pig for some of these experiments and stuff that they were just using him to try and see if this stuff worked. I don't know.
And whether or not that guy's individual case is true or not, it actually might be vitally important to the economy for the economy to survive, for like lots of people to be paid to do almost completely pointless stuff like that, like harassment and gangster. Like, you wonder who pays for this. How do they have the resources for it? Well, actually, they're practically needing to burn money to keep the thing flowing, to keep it all working. And then about just Young,
just like city highway projects.
And yet Young, he also has Philemon. He had a higher self type entity spirit that he was in contact with regularly. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, going back to the walk-in inhabitants and the possibility that some spirit or something can just take someone over. There is a theory from a gentleman I had on my show a few times. His name is Trey Hudson. He is a researcher out at the Meadow, and the Meadow is like a Skinwalker Ranch location. I think it's in Alabama. He never really gives away the location, but he's a paranormal investigator, former intelligence, and he's out there investigating all the high strange stuff that happens out there. Well, he had an experience where they were doing some kind of experiments, working on something, and this woman pulls up in this SUV, steps out, and she's got this nice pantsuit on, dressed very nicely, and she starts asking him some strange questions and saying, "Oh, I went to college with you," and started telling them information about himself and asking what they were doing out there. And she started seemingly malfunctioning, is what he said. She started saying stuff like, "You want to come see my monkey bears?" And then she walked a few steps away from them, pulled down her underwear and pissed right in front of them, turned around, got in her RV and left, and just was gone. But he thinks it's some kind of Men in Black type encounter, that he looked her up later and he got in touch with her and was like, do you remember that experience? Do you remember what we talked about? She's like, I remember pulling up, and then I don't remember anything. I don't remember any of the conversation. I don't even remember how I got home that night. And it's his theory that she got this kind of walk-in entity that took over, that was going to do the Men in Black investigation because it was convenient for just to take over somebody and go there and do their thing and then take off. But that's such an interesting theory when you think of a lot of those strange encounters,
Yeah. Yeah. The Men in Black stuff is fascinating. Always makes for good stories, for sure.
Yeah, man.
Now, like, where else do we go? Like, what is some greatest hits action from Forbidden Knowledge podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Some of my favorites are Skinwalker Ranch encounters. Oh, I got to tell you one. It's a haunting story from a gentleman named James Keenan. Used to be a police officer. Now he's a paranormal researcher, investigator, and it's probably because of this experience. He was answering a house call. He was with his partner, and it was he said that it was because of some kind of disturbance in the house. Well, they get to the location and it's a couple and they're terrified downstairs and they're like, it's upstairs, go see. And so he starts walking upstairs. James is in front, his partner's in the back. And he says, when they get to the middle, like halfway up the stairs, they hear voices like screaming and yelling profanities and just all these awful things. And he goes up a little bit further and the voices get louder. And when he gets to the top of the stairs, he said there's this wall that they're facing and it's like a wood panel wall, but there were legit faces like coming out of there and yelling these horrible things and profanities and saying, I hate you. And like, I want a divorce and all these awful, like nasty things. And they just stared at it for a minute and whoop, it just went back to a wall. And he turns around, he's like, let's go. Let's not even tell anybody about this. So come to find out, this couple was having like major domestic issues. They were yelling and arguing all day. So, maybe it manifested this kind of force or energy into the walls and it was repeating some of the stuff that they yell and some of the nasty vitriol that they spew at each other. So that's one. That's a pretty interesting one. And another is a
Hold
Skinwalker
on, real
Ranch.
quick.
Yeah.
Rachel in the chat says, I had some very weird targeted individual activity directed at me during the Nazis. I've never heard of that. That must be like the, between 2000 2010. The Nazis. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Fecal matter smeared across my car, up inside my car door handle, laptop screen going black all the time, and writing files wiped. Oh wow. So
Possible.
I happen to I think that you're pretty cool and your testimony is trustworthy. So
Yeah.
it's hard to really try to like bottle this all up and just know what it is, but I think it all becomes a lot more, I don't know, not acceptable, but like I can conceive of this or believe people's at least subjective experiences when we get out of the everything's just pure physicality and into the all is mind perspective that maybe there are beings that operate in a different type of body than us that requires a different layer of perceptual bandwidth range to perceive, and then sometimes maybe we slip into that. I wonder.
Yeah, man, I don't know, but this is one of the most profound stories I've heard when it comes to just crazy paranormal manifestations. My friend Ryan Burns, you might have heard of him. He's a Skinwalker Ranch researcher. He has property on Skinwalker Ranch, or like on the edge of it, and he's doing research out there. He has several non-disclosure agreements with aerospace companies because they're out there constantly doing experiments. He's working with different people doing his own experiments. Weird shit, like they got a thing called an lamp that mimics the effects of DMT within a certain radius for people that are surrounding it. They've got different frequency things. They've got the God helmet. They've got all kinds of crazy shit that they're working with out there to try and make contact. He sent me a picture of when they're running one of these frequencies. He sent me a picture of it. Looked like, I shit you not, a Dementor, a huge Dementor thing like from Harry Potter floating above them. It was crazy, but some of the most crazy experiences he's had, and I trust this dude. I mean, he definitely believes it. That's for sure. He's had experiences where he's seen like a coyote come out and then turn into this like tornado of dust or nanoparticulates and just whirl away. He's also had experiences where one of his friends was attacked by nanoparticulates that formed into a man or a beast and physically grabbed him and lifted him off the ground. And then he's had experiences with humanoid figures that don't quite look right. Like the creepiest one was him and a couple other researchers out in the street, and they were approached by a very tall, slender, what appeared to be like this man in a security guard outfit. But as he got closer, things weren't right. Like, it looked like he didn't have a face. His arms looked like they kept changing length, and he looked like he was just kind of just not physical in any way. He looked like he was kind of melting and shifting, and he would pick up what he was trying to make look like a walkie-talkie and act like he was talking into it, but these weird sounds started coming out, and he just kept approaching him, looking weirder and weirder with these like elongated squid looking arms. And he finally just stopped a few feet, and they're looking at this thing, which is apparently not human at all, has no facial features, and it slowly just begins to back up and like slither away. So crazy shit like that, man. I don't know what to make of it. I do know that he definitely believes it. And whether it's like, like we're talking about, maybe this is some military industrial high tech shit that's causing these manifestations. I don't know, but it's crazy.
Well, what I want Gabe to riff on something, but first, I like to also address how this type of stuff can have like a scary energy to it. But in my experience and in the experience of a lot of people I respect that have, met the Cthulhu beings at different times, that there's a certain power that you can leverage where basically, if there are two minds in a space, the one that knows that everything is a part of it will always win out over the one that acts like it's separate. Right. So whatever it is we encounter, whatever, even if it's like, little grubs and demonic parasites and energy sucking beings or what have you, that in some level, in some capacity, these are all aspects of self. And we have made, it's almost like you can even look at it the way that a bad relationship goes, where over time you start putting more and more of your problems on this other person, and their behavior irks you more, and you basically make a monster of them in your mind, where it's the exact same type of thing as when you like sort of over idealize somebody, but in the reverse. And eventually, every relationship that ends in a bad way, that's been a long-term one, has some element of this where you've made the other into a monster and projected your problems onto them and made them the source of it. Every energy vampire, psychic vampire requires a willing empath to play the victim side. So I think that to some degree, maybe these type of entities that get scary, get spooky, get violent, get poltergeisty are us projecting our fears and our problems and our self-recriminations onto some kind of nebulous, mysterious, metaphysical malefactor. But that if we can just, in the moment of the experience, the moment of contact, I think if we flip the script and we're like, I'm not afraid of you because I know that you're me, then you have the ability to command this energy or this entity. And what you can do, rather than maybe just straight up banishing it, maybe try asking it questions at that point, because I think that it would respond well. And then Gabe, whenever you have a moment, Gabe, I want you to bring into this weave the like Eleusinian, simulated contact with gods and divines thing that maybe has been part of the mix of human culture to get mass belief and adoption in certain egregores for a long time, and like how military abduction simulations might play into that or be an offshoot of that. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, get your thoughts on this too. It kind of melts and coincides into everything we're about to get into, but the aspect of occult rituals and manifesting what seems to be intelligences or spiritual, physical, not physical, but manifestations that multiple people can witness at the same time. He's told me multiple stories that they probably even participate in certain magical practices, occult rituals that have an effect on our reality, a visual effect. He said that times they've witnessed portals opening and entities coming out, like light beings or energetic types of happenings. Not sure what they are, but he said that he's witnessed things like this with a group of other people. So if it is, some sort of part of us, it could also work collectively, I imagine.
Man, oh
Carrie
man.
on or Keisha on Rockfin says, as a quantum hypnosis practitioner, I can tell you that this type of information is coming through in a big way currently.
Yes.
And then she's referencing something called the Manchurian Project. I don't know about that.
Man. There's so much going on at once. For one, I wish I could pay more attention to all the comments, because the comments are really on fire right now.
They always are.
They are. This is going to be a good show. So this idea of that these experiences, they are, I think of it as unpacking a huge amount of accumulated information all in one moment. And I think that is a kind of a brief outline of what I'm about to say in a 1,000 different ways. But it's like, it's traumatic to fucking be here. And along the way, we pick up what some might call like emotional debt or psychic debt. And that is basically to say, like, you have an experience, and you're like, I can't even fucking deal with that. I'm going to put that away. I'll deal with it later. Maybe
what
tonight.
You're saying is super accurate. And then, like, I call it the backlog.
Yes.
You build up a backlog of unprocessed emotions. And to just like cap this addition to your thought, most important, I think, a realization I've had recently, knowing what your trauma is not what heals it. Figuring out how the trauma affected your behavior and the patterns that arose in your life and that you expected to keep coming because of that trauma. If you can see how it affected your behavior and affected the rippling, repeating scenarios that may seem unrelated, but they are actually the same thing, then you feel the trauma. You got to see the pattern, the weave of it, and how it affected your behavior. That's the actual processing. You don't have to re-feel the pain. You don't have to re-feel the emotion. You don't even necessarily have to like go tell the person who hurt your feelings they hurt your feelings. You just need to see how it affected your behavior. And that's how you undo the backlog. Right. In my opinion, professionally.
Yeah. What is she? The ancient one, Tao, Tao. Her advice to Mordo, he said, you help me defeat my demons to become a greater hero. And she's like, no, bro, you got it messed up. We never defeat our demons. We merely learn to live above them. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Like, so yeah, you accumulate this debt, this backlog, and then ideally you put yourself in a choice ritualistic space so that you can process all of that debt. But some people come at it like I did in college, all snoochy boochies. They're like, yeah, pop me an eighth of mushrooms on my first go, and you are not ready to deal. You don't have the sacred ritualistic space. You go into a party and everybody's a fucking 1,000 eyeballed monster staring right into your soul, But then this is another thing I want to say that's important about that, is that even if we do come into it with that mindfulness and that intention of purification, the idea that I'm going to take this bath and go through this cleansing, I just want to remind everybody that it's ever so important to close off ritual with as much reverence as you entered into it. In fact, it should probably be a little bit poetic. The beginning should rhyme with the end.
Dude, what you're saying is so true. Since I started bringing that into my work with clients, it's like that is possibly the moment of highest heightened inspiration is the closing moment. Something like comes through and it's always so beautiful and profound, and it does feel super important. I'm glad you said that. We should remind people of that all the time. Thank you, Carrie, for giving us that wisdom the other day, a few weeks back.
Yeah. These and then I also believe that Eleusinian rituals, the Pythagorean, maybe not the Pythagoreans, but these certain cults have certain rites that are designed for a person to process these things in a controlled, in a controlled environment. And in to whatever degree, I mean, think about it. They didn't have psychology. They didn't have psychologists. They didn't have a couch. They didn't have a profession. They had these initiatory rituals. So yeah, I just kind of think that, oh, and then one last thing is, while I'm talking about we carry baggage of our own individually, there is even another layer to that. And that is the ancestral baggage, people we never have even met that were long gone before we got here. But then there's even your own folks. They probably have some kind of baggage that was handed off to you, unspoken, unacknowledged, unrecorded, unseen, and that'll come up in your vision quest as well.
Yeah, I agree. I've had plenty of experiences where it was seemingly healing past life traumas. I've gone through therapeutic sessions with people that do it's not necessarily past life regressions, but they were using certain techniques and frequencies to elicit the healing process from those memories and not necessarily reliving them. But it was a very interesting experience. So I completely understand that. And I think that does have a lot to do with our life experience and where we choose to go, and how, and if we choose to heal those and face those or not, what our life will be like after.
Yeah, man. Isn't it fascinating how, if you're like more into the spiritual woo-woo camp, you can call it reincarnation. Everybody agrees how that works. But if you're in this scientific other paradigm, you just call it DNA, and it's the same thing. It still works. You could say, oh, in my past lives. Well, then the other camp, they would prefer that you say, my ancestors experienced this, because your ancestors are you as well. We can agree that we are carrying our ancestors, whether it's on the woo side or the science side, it still works out.
I had this, what you're saying is awesome. It's just different languages for the same thing. I was at the gym today, and there's a couple trainers there that I see pretty much every time I go. They're there every day, and I go every day. And this one guy, good guy, seems like a good guy, but he's always bitching to his clients about problems with his family members. And I also hear him talking to the other trainers. I can't help it over here because I don't like to have headphones in while I'm working out. I just want to be just me. But unfortunately, that means I'm exposed to a lot of terrible music in the gym. But I hear this same guy who's complaining about family members a lot, and that he's always like in this conversation with another one of the trainers about, how do I get my diet right? My digestion's all messed up. I'm having all these problems with my gut. And today, I heard this conversation come up again, and then he mentions he's gonna go get like tested for food allergies or some stupid shit. And at this point, I was finally like, all right, I got to interject, and then that meant I needed to unload like my best elevator pitch of like, your energy field is a thing, and yada yada. Your digestive problems are a manifestation of your undigested frustration and resentment. This is all sacral level stuff. And this spiraled into like a 45-minute conversation between me, him, and trainer number 3 or trainer number 2. And where I'm bringing the energy field side, the biofield knowledge side, the sort of chi subtle energy thing. And then the guy we're trying to help is like in between us. And then the other trainer, he's coming at it from like the very physical nuts and bolts side. And we're both talking about the same thing. And I had to like try to bridge that and be like, look, you're talking about I'm talking about manifesting the feeling of satisfaction in your body through gratitude practices to balance out the polarity of frustration and resentment and allow your gut to actually do its job. And you're talking about meditating, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, all the benefits that come with that. We're saying the same thing. I'm talking about energy field stuff. You're talking about genetics and epigenetics. We're saying the same thing. And it was just cool to have a moment where some, you know, people that are not into the deep woo, but like all the components were there in the conversation to be like, look, there's a simpler way to comprehend how your physical form works without the need for all of this, the science trademark jargon. You know, it's actually very simple. And in terms of the ancestral trauma thing, the last client I worked with, we were dealing just with what she didn't realize were influences more from her parents' parents than from her parents, you know? And it was a lot of blocked stuff in the root chakra from that. And as we cleared it, she started getting like really hot. Like she felt like someone had turned the temperature up 15 or 20 degrees in her room. And then it started getting really sore. And I was like, it's been sore the whole time. You've just been filtering it out. Now we're in the healing process. But, you know, so there can sometimes be, my point in saying this is that sometimes the energy inherited from a generation back is so strong that the reaction to healing that or moving that and processing that can be more intense and physically noticeable, like in the sense that she was getting really hot, than you know, a lot of client work I do where we're just dealing with stuff from this life or from their current parents. So there's definitely something to the ancestral element of all this. And I think that the same goes for entity contact, aliens, fairies, what have you, that it often runs in the family to encounter certain kind of beings. And maybe there's even spirits of the land, you know, that's of certain of actual geographic locations. And maybe part of why this is all so new to us or feels so foreign to us is because at large, most people are living in a region where their ancestors got there via diaspora, that's not their homeland, you know, like, or something. It's just a thought.
Yeah, man. I wanted to speak to the gratitude aspect for a minute. I found once I started to realize that gratitude was a huge driving factor in propelling myself and my spiritual goals and where I wanted to be, that to be grateful for everything was like a booster, and it made everything come together. It seemed like the universe responded to gratitude in a major way. I, you know, start singing songs, thank you all day, just making up different songs, and it was like there was this quickening of great manifestation in my life of these wonderful things that started to happen. The more grateful I was for everything previous and everything that's happened in my life. So every day, man, I try not to bitch about anything. I try to realize how wonderful everything is and be just thankful for every moment. And the more I put that out into the universe, the more the universe thanks me back and just gives me a little nudge in the right direction, you know?
So I wanted to mention the Collins family. Like Chance was mentioning that certain bloodlines are probably a little more get a little more attention for probably very good reasons. The family, Collins family, they were targeted from different branches during the Salem witch trials, and so and for different reasons, but they are related. These different witches in different locations, and today the Collins family elite is calling things on a major level. I think that a lot of people who can track themselves back to the Salem witch trials are experiencing a fascinating karmic result of that sanguinity. We'll just put it that way. There's probably a lot to flesh out of that. But you're just north of Fort Collins, right? In Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Even the state of Colorado has like the Collins family logo on there. And there's a thread going all the way back to Columbus, I think, and the Colognes. But I just wanted to ask you, Chris, are you going to go up to the Skinwalker Ranch? Have you thought about?
I have the trip set up already. This is going to be the next part of my docu-series. The first part, season 1, is Paranormal Louisiana, Occult Louisiana, which is where I'm from. I went to Louisiana and did a bunch of interviews and filming, and that one should be coming out in July. But it's going to be an ongoing docu-series. The next location I'm going to is Uintah Basin in New Mexico to get the paranormal aspects of Skinwalker Ranch, UFOs, all that stuff. But I have my friend Ryan Burns. I'll be staying with him, and hopefully we'll check it out and see what happens while I'm out there. But I'm excited, man. I've always wanted to go for a long time and check that stuff out and see if I could experience anything myself, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm definitely going out there.
So the docu-series is about Skinwalker, or you're just starting there?
It's the docu-series is going to be an ongoing series about different locations in the United States that have paranormal or occult history or interesting conspiratorial history or just high strange aspects to it. I'm going to try to go to as many states as possible. And I started out with Louisiana, and a couple of months ago, I went down there, started filming, did a bunch of interviews, had some incredible experiences, and met with some incredible experiencers of high strange phenomena, and interviewed them, and tour guides and people in New Orleans, and got a little bit. The whole docuseries is going to cover everything from pirate history, the native mound builders, voodoo, the modern paranormal history, the dark history of slavery and plantations, all the way up into what modern experiencers are experiencing with hauntings and some of the insane cryptid encounters that people have with Bigfoot and Dogman around there. And that's going to be like the highlight of that first episode. And then the second one, we have planned to go out to Skinwalker Ranch, and we'll see what we get there.
Oh man, Bigfoot and Dogman. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dude,
Let
me tell you, if you got time, let me tell you, let's end on with a bang for a
we
Bigfoot
got time.
And Dogman. All right. Bigfoot and Dogman experience. One of the main experiencers, that I'm putting in the documentary, his name is Scott Pace. He's just your regular good old boy from Louisiana. He likes hunting, he likes fishing, and he loves Jesus. And he's a very spiritual, church-going man. Doesn't want anything from anybody, not looking for attention, and never experienced anything out of the ordinary until last year. He's hunting. He's in a deer stand, and he's looking out his rifle. And I've interviewed this man several times. The nicest, sweetest man. I don't see him lying about anything. He definitely believes his experiences. Again, looking through the scope of a rifle, and he sees what he describes as the biggest, hairiest man he's ever seen, covered in black hair and matted hair. And he said he's at least 7 or 8 foot tall, walking towards him. And he something tells him to pan the rifle over. He pans it to the right, and he sees, I shit you not, what he only describes as a werewolf man standing there in kind of a very menacing position. And then all of a sudden he hears in his head a voice saying, you better put that gun down, or I'm going to come up there and tear you apart. And then he hears a distinct other voice say, no, he's not going to do anything. He's just looking at us. Don't do that. And he's freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. So he tries to communicate with whatever these things are in his mind. He's like, I'm not going to hurt anybody. I was just looking. I'm going to leave. And he's terrified. He runs out the deer stand, and he looks back, and he says there's about 2 or 3 other creatures that are following him out, humanoid creatures, very tall, hairy creatures following him out of the swamp area. Well, after that, he, for some reason, got cracked open. He started having experiences where he would wake up in the night and he would hear footsteps in his house. He'd look out his window and he'd see what he describes as a Sasquatch looking in his window. And he started to become very curious about this. And he started to go out, and being the religious man that he was, he'd bring his Bible and he'd start quoting his Bible verse out in the swamp. And he eventually started having communication, like psychic communication, from some of these beings. And they would peek. He said he could see them peeking behind the trees, and he'd see eye shine. And he eventually started seeing different types of beings, what he calls little forest people. There are like 3 or 4 foot tall beings that are covered in black hair that he said have like kaleidoscope spinning eyes that the eye shine you can see from these things at night look like kaleidoscopes, and they're spinning around and they look creepy as hell, and they poke out their heads out from the trees. And he has one particular Bigfoot that he supposedly formed this psychic relationship that he calls Stevie Wonder, because every time he sees him, the Bigfoot is apparently doing like this and peeking behind the trees. And he sings Bible verses to them. He communicates with them. And he said they respond very well to the Bible, and they enjoy them, and they talk with him psychically. And eventually these experiences turned into extraterrestrial experiences for this poor dude. He doesn't know what's going on. He says he'd start having missing time, and he'd wake up the next day and have memories of being escorted through dark underground catacombs with gray extraterrestrials and mantis beings. So this is an ongoing thing. I keep interviewing him because he has these ongoing experiences now with Bigfoot, Dogman, and apparently extraterrestrial beings.
But will they let him bring a friend? Maybe
Well,
you can go for the doc.
He's had a few people with him. He started to put notes up on Facebook. He formed Facebook groups to find people who are having these same experiences around him. And he started to go out with posses, and they've had group experiences. One of the most profound was, they said a Bigfoot tried to reach in his truck and steal his cell phone out of his hand, and he had to slap the hand of the Bigfoot, and it just kind of took off and walked away. Another experience said he's sitting with
Imagine slapping the hand of a 8-foot tall hairy man.
Next
time you talk to him, ask him if it's true that they love peanut butter.
Peanut butter. I'll ask him. But
I've
he
heard
said
Bigfoot loves peanut butter.
Yeah, maybe so. But he was sitting with his friends, and he said this was the craziest thing that happened to him. This isn't a Bigfoot, but he said a beam of light just kind of seemingly came down from the sky and opened up a portal. And these 3 translucent 7 or 8 foot tall beings casually walked out of the portal and in front of the truck. And there was 3 or 4 witnesses, he says, to this. And I interviewed the other people. They all have the correlating stories. And the beings just walked down a hill out of their line of sight. And these things are just kind of regularly occurring for this dude now. So, like I said, I know he definitely believes it. I know the other witnesses I've talked to, they seemingly believe it. I don't think any of them are lying. None of them are trying to go out on talk shows and get famous and tell their stories. None of them care unless you ask them. None of them are talking about it unless you ask them about it. So, and these are, people in Louisiana I grew up with, they're very down to earth. They're not looking for attention. And these are just your seemingly regular, normal folks having some pretty crazy experiences. So that's pretty interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I like how it's a progression. How he's like, it's like a perfect progression, because he starts off as like a conservative skeptic Christian on his own. He's even alone hunting.
Well, he
for
has
himself.
a girlfriend, but he's usually alone when it started for him.
Yeah, so he has like all a sense of independence in the beginning. And then something kind of pulls him out of his own shell, and he's like, okay, maybe I should talk back and read some gospel. And then he gets this feedback, but then the experience expands even more to like, okay, now I'm going to bring friends and community into this. And then that expands it. And then eventually it even becomes mantids and grays. There's like this evolution.
And he had never heard of mantid beings before. Like he claims he didn't know what that was before he started having experience. He's heard of like gray extraterrestrials, but he didn't know they had insect extraterrestrials until he encountered it in his experience, which is pretty interesting.
Wow. Okay. Well, oh man, there is so much on the table all at once. Okay. So I just want to mention a lot of the initiatory symbols. Remember I was talking about the 1 and the 2? So 12, that's a foot. Big foot is a 1, 2. We're talking about feet. The initiation, the first step across the threshold. You're entering into a new experience. Also, the dog is on the Fool card. Fool card is the beginning, the initiation. It's the beginning of a hero, the Fool's journey. Skinwalker has always, to me, whispered. Well, for one, it's a Fool card also. The Fool card is Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is looking off at two suns on the skyline. One is the 0 on the Fool card, and the other sun is the sun behind him. So the Fool card, it has a dog by his side. So Skinwalker, Skywalker, Fool card, all things initiatory are being brought up onto the table here. And skin in the game is circumcision. It is the placenta that's removed when you're born. It's also ante up. You got to ante up if you want to get in the game, you know? So there's so many things that are initiatory, but even Bigfoot has the J to the B, the Joachim and the Boaz, the two pillars at the temple that, as you initiate, as you come in. There was one more thing, but I'm forgetting what it was. Oh, the mantis. Okay, I wanted to say this. The mantis, she allegedly, like one of the common things, and then like you said, he didn't know about what a mantis was, but his account is going to comport to other people's reports of the mantid. You know, it's like there are these real subtle details that people will bring to bear that they're not into this stuff. And when they start to correlate their experience to other people's who they've never even talked to, that's when things get interesting. But like, did he by chance mention the voice box of the mantid?
No, I don't think so. What he did mention is during these experiences, he can't remember much. They're kind of choppy, hazy memories, but he said it seems like for some reason, he doesn't know why, but it seems like they're teaching him things or giving him some kind of knowledge that he didn't have before. And there's something interesting about this man is when I first met him and started interviewing him almost a year ago, he seemed like a different person. He didn't, I don't want to say he's more intelligent now, but he seems to have like a very broadened perspective of reality now that it very seems to come on very quickly. And it's very interesting. It does seem like in a way he may have been downloaded with certain information because he's not only become super interested in all this stuff, but he's absorbing all this information. And at times he says he will know something about these creatures that hasn't talked to anybody, but he'll go look up in a book and be like, I knew that already. You know, I've already known this. So it's very interesting. The possibilities of, is this, you know, consciousness upgrading itself? Are these beings physical hominids that are like forest sorcerers that know how to manipulate consciousness or our perception? I don't know.
Right. Man,
I want to throw something into the mix here.
But before we get too far from the mantid, I want to mention
Go ahead.
The mantid, she has some sort of charm under her neck. Some people say it's a song or a reverberation or a light, and that it hypnotizes people, and that they because her appearance would be shocking, but there's something that they can't look away because of this thing under her neck. Well, I've been finding this a pattern in esoterica around the Hecate, the priestess of Hecate. She will wear a beard, an ornamental beard under her chin. And it's not like she's trying to convince you she's a man. She's totally a woman. There's even straps connected to the beard. But this pattern is coming up in art in very unlikely places. I'm finding it like pictures of Aphrodite coming out of the seashell. There's this strange shadow being cast around the throat chakra of this goddess figure. And I just wanted to maybe insinuate for people.
This was what was open in my other window. This is TK or Tish. This is the goddess of fortune, you know, of an Aphrodite type. And look at her throat.
What the heck?
This is Mahreya. This is the god or the goddess of heaven. You know, the heavenly mother. She's got the fortress on her head. Anyway, just this the old ass sculpture of, and there's something weird going on with the throat. It's almost like where she's holding the shaft of wheat. She's pointing at her throat, and look what she's standing on. Look what she's standing on.
And the wheat is golden. So this light from the mantid is reported to be a golden light, like a really alluring golden light. Chris, did he mention that it was a female mantid?
He did not say if it was a female.
See,
All he
that's
said
one of
was it was definitely an insectoid being that looked like a praying mantis. That's what he
yeah.
described it as. He said it was
See,
wearing
that's
a robe though.
oh, okay. Yeah,
He did say
that's
robe.
one of the things that always gets me too. Is like people will give their accounts, and they don't even realize that there's this uniformity of a feminine mantid being. That the
Mhm.
mantid being is generally feminine, which is very profound because we know that the female mantid eats the head of the mate. You know,
Mm.
so it kind of insinuates that cannibalistic element.
Right.
So
Yeah,
what
man, it's interesting.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
put a little question to Chris as maybe like the final question. So I have a theory about this reality, if you will, that there's no such thing as extinction. You know, I'm a big Tolkien guy, first of all, and he seems to write with the assumption that little people, elves, dwarves, etc., hobbits, that kind of thing, that those all did exist at some point in our history. And we also see a shrinking of the biosphere in at least what we can perceive of it as our lifetimes have gone on. In a lot of places, you see less animals, less biomass. My example would be when I went to college, I lived 3 hours away from my hometown. And when I would drive back and forth back then, my windshield would always be covered with splattered bugs. And now if I take that same road, no bugs. You know, my windshield's clean. I'd have to wash the windshield a couple of times on that trip when I was at college age. So just in a few short years, like the amount of mass of biological material, living beings has shrunk. But I wonder, because I know people who work with orgone devices, they do what they call gifting to change the frequency coherence of things like the cell towers, combating the ability for the spraying over our heads to actually create the haze that blocks the light, and you know, disrupting the frequency lattice or the frequency fence that has been put in place by some of this technology that is supposedly to power our wireless communications. But what I think, you know, may be going on, because what they witness in places like Arizona, where they've done a ton of this gifting to change the weather, even, you know, they've brought about monsoon seasons by disrupting all these towers. And like it's a deep rabbit hole there. Actually, you might want to talk to Mitch, the orgone donor, about that, because he's really done fascinating work. But in the process of changing the weather in Arizona in just a couple of years, they're seeing certain kinds of animals return that they thought were gone or didn't exist. Like one in particular is the triops, which is like this weird little sand shrimp thing, this strange little crustacean bug that was like extinct, but now it's just popping up again. Or big cats coming down and into the environment again, that were thought to be gone. And my point with this is just that, you know, what if part of this technological expansion we've gone through with all the frequency soup that we're sitting in through it is actually, in a way, you know, it's affecting our mind because we're constantly being reminded and reinforced of fear, war, death, famine, extinction, environmental crisis, always being hammered in through the Globox portal. But then on the other hand, maybe there's actually a frequency element where it's putting us in a frequency range or a bandwidth range that is narrowed. Because I think, like, how I see the expansion force and the contraction force, love and fear in the world, is that love has to do with more potential. You know, whoever you love, you want them to be able to choose for themselves whatever they want with no restriction, as long as it's good. And when you're afraid, when you're afraid, you tend to narrow down the list of possibilities of what you think would be okay down to just a few, or down to just one. You know, if you're super afraid, you're like, if this doesn't happen, everything's over. It's got to be this one way. So I think maybe with these cryptids, with, you know, Bigfoots, etc., maybe even some of these beings that we would consider or categorize as aliens or fairies, that humanity at a certain point was less restricted in the bandwidth of frequency possibility that they could exist in, and that we've narrowed it down, and that if we can get back into a widened scope of perception, that a lot of this stuff that we thought never existed, is mythological, or has gone extinct, would actually start to just repopulate our environment as we gained the range to perceive it and went further into love and out of fear. But part of it would have to be that we're like willing to accept their existence. Otherwise, they just got to skirt around the fringes of our consciousness until we accept that they're like allowed to be here with us.
I think that's kind of happening now with people's awareness broadening and people becoming more aware of what's right in front of them and some of the things that are happening in their reality that they weren't aware of, and this whole conscious awakening that seems to be happening on a global scale. But I think it also is the technology you were just mentioning, this 5G and this frequency soup that we're surrounded in, is probably blocking a lot of our consciousness abilities, our abilities to perceive some of these things. And I've even heard stories of, I think it's the Inuit elders saying that they can't do an astral projection anymore because some of these frequencies are so powerful that they can't reach certain states during meditation. It makes me also wonder how much this is affecting our spiritual development and where we could be if we weren't constantly surrounded with these and bombarded with these frequencies, what we could possibly be capable of, what we could be witnessing right now. I'm sure it would be a completely different reality than what we have now. And we have no idea what life was even like 50, 100 years ago. So it may have even been dramatically different. Our perceptions maybe the world just seemed a little brighter before, or we would notice more things before they had these advancements in technologies and frequencies surrounding us all the time. So I think that's probably a huge factor in what we can perceive and what we can't. And also awareness and probably belief is a huge factor as well.
Oh man, so we got to let you go soon. Me and Slick might, hang around a little bit with the people. We're having fun, but buddy, is there any closing thoughts you want to leave people with? And then after that, can you remind everyone all the ways that they can get more of your excellent work? Steady, consistent, just getting it done, podcasting gold over there.
Oh, thank you, man. And thank you guys for having me. This was excellent. I'd love to have you both back on my show again. So we're going to do that. Just want to,
let's do our Marvel stuff with you. Me and Gabe have a whole thing where we talk about the symbolic stuff in Marvel that in tarot being used to program the collective consciousness in ways that is not perceived by the regular people. We'll talk about it offline, but we have a lot of, me and him can do some combo stuff together. We're good.
You know what?
Yeah.
While we're on it, Chance, I just learned that Anteros, the twin of Eros, his twin, one of his epithets is the Avenger. All along, it's like he's the original. He would be the original. Then that's kind of important. Yeah, just wanted to throw that to bring us full circle.
Nice. Yeah, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank the audience for being here, and thank everyone on this planet that's awakening right now and perpetuating this beautiful path that I believe we're headed on. And I think we're going to have a really wonderful future, and this awakening is unstoppable. So thank you all. And you can find me on all podcast platforms. Our website is forbiddenknowledge.news. That is also the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature other podcasts, similar podcasts from our community. We have about 10 shows that we feature on there. We're also on Rockfin. We're on Rumble and Odyssey. And if you would like to help us finish this at least first episode of the docuseries, which is set to come out in July, if you'd like to help with a donation, anything is greatly appreciated. We have an easy way that you can do that. You can go to supportfkn.com. That would be amazing. And I think that is it. So go check. Oh, and we got YouTube where we just put some safe clips up, and that's about it. So thank you guys.
Thank you, man. It's definitely been fun. We'll have to keep this collaboration train going. I'm sure we
Hell
have
yeah, this was fun.
a lot in store. Cool, man. All right. Well,
Yeah.
you take care, buddy. Much love.
Take it easy.
Good to meet you, Chris.
All right. So, first of all, I want to just thank the generous super chatters over on Rockfin. Laura Ramsey tipped $10 and Logan Cook $5. Logan's always tipping. Great dude. Matt Emery $20. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate that. Feel free. Anybody else that wants to super chat, it all, like Chris was saying at the beginning of the show. This pays my rent, except it's mortgage. This pays my mortgage. This pays for me to eat, like you want to do that. I appreciate it. But also I'm fully in trust and faith that whatever needs to come to me will. That was something that kind of got left in the dust as we just progress forward rapidly into all the fringe. But that at the beginning of this talk, if you weren't here, Chris gave an excellent testimony about the power of jumping off that cliff, the leap of faith into the wild unknown, doing what you're here to do, ditching everything that makes your soul cry, and that what you need will show up when you need it, even if it seems like no way that's going to work out, but I'm just going to go for it. Man, all that business with him contacting some kind of like mediator to the source in the bathtub meditating, that was some pretty wild and cool stuff right there. I love people's stories like that. The higher self,
Yes.
the Philemon.
That was so cool. And I was straight up like every Wednesday, like clockwork, it never fails. I was on a Philip K. Dick kick this morning. And here he is talking about getting the uploads. You know what I mean? I love it. I absolutely love it. I think Rising from the Ashes crew everybody is planning to read the Philip K. Dick trilogy, which for me, that's going to take, it's going to take me a while to catch up. I'm at 0. I've read none of it, but just the suggestion.
Right now, I'm still reading Anacalypsis. I read about 2 to 3 pages a day, because for every paragraph I read, I have to write about half a page of notes and chase down leads. And, my new rule with reading is like, if I learn something new, I have to take note of it in an organized fashion. And with Anacalypsis, practically everything I read is learning something new. So I don't have time for other books right now.
Yeah, man. How's your journaling coming along?
I'm no longer journaling. I did a lot of journaling last year, and that was a great habit, but the steam for that has kind of fallen off. But I'm definitely an initiator of new things, and I like to do that rapidly. So right now, Milau Alinika, I speak Greek. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I should have told Chris, how do I say it? Cheropoli. That means nice to meet you. Cheropoli. But I already met him, so I guess that doesn't work. Anyway, I'm plugging away at the daily Greek lessons, and that's going well. That's how I found out that Nero means water, which is so interesting, because Nero is the seculum, the protogonos, the firstborn of the first cause. So if everyone out there wants to know how to say, I would like to drink some water, let me see. You say, Thaitala nepio ligo nero. Thaitala nepio ligo nero. That's, I would like to drink some water. So, I'm learning some stuff. I'm getting there.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. What is it? The path is straight and narrow.
Narrow. Whoa. I hadn't even thought of that weave. Yo.
Right. And
good.
It's like
and there's also sometimes that you see N and M get mixed up. I don't have any specific receipts on that, but when you hear Nero, it makes one wonder. Meru, Mount Meru, Nero. I think all that is definitely in the mix. I mean, anytime when you get that phonetic Ero, there's something there for sure.
Yeah. So like you were talking about coming through a reset or some sort of filter, that metaphor of the path is straight and narrow is it's almost like saying that for one, it makes me think of fjording. When you fjord across a river, there's only a select part of that stream that is safe, you know. And some people, if they come in too broad of a swath of like a migrant uh whatever body, then some people are going to get swept away because they didn't stay along the narrows, you know. So it's so fascinating how these metaphors are true on so many levels, but you kind of have to take yourself back in the technology to, you know, before we had bridges, you know. And even I wrote that down when you said it, you know. Makes me think of crossing the Rubicon. The Rubicon was a river that Caesar allegedly crossed, and that event has taken place metaphorically in individuals' lives, and it's also been recreated in battles. You know, George Washington crossing
That's what I was thinking. George
the Delaware.
Washington.
Yep. So yeah, we've crossed the Rubicon in so many ways, so many times.
I found us a call in from Cucumber.
Hey, all
So,
right.
what's up, Cucumber? Let me hold on just a second. Let me make sure I got the version of it I want. I had to turn up the volume a little bit. And yeah, all right. This is the one. Cool. So we're going to hear from him. It's a little over a minute. Love getting some call-ins on the voicemail line. Appreciate that. Anybody else wants to? I'm looking at you, Polymath thing. I would love to get a call in. All right, here we go.
Hey, so I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but in high school, I indulged in a research chemical called 2,5-I, is how my friend would tell me about the name. That's how he would say it. One of our other friends tried, I don't know how many tabs of it, and he had seen a 10-foot gnome in his bathroom somehow. And what else? I remember my imagination feeling real, like I couldn't shake like a daydream, and I would just go into it like a regular dream. I don't even. Well, we got our hands on it through a friend who got it off, I guess, the deep web, whatever that was back in 2012. So yeah, I just wanted to share that about information feeling too real. But like the whole thing was we didn't see each other's images. It was a personal trip. I don't think we could see what the other person sees. Hey, so I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but in high
Oh,
school,
sorry. It's
I
on a loop.
indulged in a research chemical called.
Yeah, man, those research chemicals are a whole nother level. You know, I once heard a theory. I mean, I don't know that I've ever taken a research chemical, but that's the thing about playing around with things that are illegal is that if anybody, you know, I guess someone out there may need to hear this, but there are such a thing as test kits where you can test what you have and verify that it is what you were told it was. And if you're going to deal with anything in that realm, you really do want to have a test kit and know how to use it. Luckily, they're not that hard to use. And it's kind of fun. You feel like you're doing chemistry, but that's a fact because you might think you're getting one thing and it is one of these research chemicals, but anyway, I've heard theories before that each of these compounds that has this psychoactive effect has its own domain in the collective psyche. And that maybe some of the less explored domains have less furniture in that particular spiritual lodge or temple. Like people in the early days of experimenting with ketamine would describe going into a void, into a very vacuous space, like a giant tower of offices with no furniture in it, metaphorically speaking. Whereas when you go into the psilocybin space, it's very populated. You know, there's a lot of people there, a lot of beings there. So I wonder, Dylan says, the only reason I don't dismiss things on entheogens as pure imagination is because some of the visuals are shapes I've never seen in this world. Nothing to compare to. That's a really good point. And then, I've had my own experiences on entheogens where I was shown something that was going to happen in the future. And then it happened and I saw exactly, I knew it was coming. I knew like, oh, the moment's coming up. And then here it is. And it happened just like I saw it before. So all reality gets really slippery in those realms. Gabe, what do you think?
Well, I seem to recall, I think it was on Crow where Dylan mentioned coming across the echidna specifically, which, I mean, he probably knows that thing's been haunting me ever since I learned about it. I mean, it really, I have quite a few supernatural beings that I am aware of, and some of them have found me very proactively. And when Dylan mentioned that he came across the echidna, I was like, bro, we need to talk. You need to sketch this thing out. Show me what she looked like. But how apropos for our brother from his Italian roots to have come across such a being, That's I don't know, that may not be what he's talking about here, but I do remember him mentioning the echidna. And man, that thing that's the real deal, man. And it's, it's also under the Vatican, it's the namesake of the Vatican is the Vatica. Let's see, yes, sir. I referenced her in book 1 as the mother of monsters. Yes.
I hate to burst your bubble on this. I'm not trying to be contrarian.
Yeah.
But I searched, to the best of my ability. And it's possible that this has just been concealed. I mean, we are talking about the greatest concealers and forgers possibly of all time, the Vatican. But I could not find any receipts on Vatica being in any place of known or at least publicly available Etruscan artifacts with inscriptions having the phrase Vatica on it. So I don't know. This is the thing, I wanted to actually bring this topic up with Chris earlier today. I thought of it, but there's this really, I'm not blaming you for this. We all do it. We all share podcast bro knowledge, without necessarily having the backup on it. It's just part of the culture. It's part of human nature. We just talk, we share what we've heard. But, there's like when I looked into this Vatica, looking for the inscription, looking for the physical artifact, looking for where does this come from? It seems like it originated with somebody's blog post where they made this claim, and then that blog post was referenced by somebody else, and then that's referenced by other people, and it just starts doing the rounds. And so it's a lot like I had a client the other day, and if you're listening, I'm not upset with you. I'm not throwing any shade or anything, but we started talking at the beginning of the session, and he's talking about his awakening journey, and he's like rattling off various like conspiratorial knowledges that he's hip to. And he's like, I know this, I know that, I know birds aren't real. And I'm like, hold up. Birds are real, dude. But we didn't dispute the point, but it seemed like he really thought birds aren't real. But if you just take a moment to look into that one, for example, the people or the guy who made up birds aren't real very openly talks about how birds aren't real isn't real. It's like a critique on conspiracy culture. And it's a valid critique because people will see the birds aren't real joke memes and such, and they will be like, oh, well, I'm conditioned to think everything coming from authority, it's actually opposite days. So, if the science trademark tells me birds are real, then I don't think birds are real. So my point being, this is a big aspect of all of the fringe stuff that we talked about with Chris tonight, that how much of it is it real, or are we playing the game of parroting and repeating? So like the healthy dose of skepticism is great, but at the other hand, are we better off to have opened imaginations and to allow ourselves wider range of possibilities? I think so. The ban of entheogens, the restriction on the ability to move from place to place, that's been, the feudal system for a long time. There is something to be said about narrowing people's experience of reality. I mean, I've referenced this before, but slave owners of the pre-Civil War American era, in their letters to each other about how to control the slaves, it was very evident that the key is to restrict the language that the slave has access to, or that the words that they know, so that they only can describe their life as being as good as it could be. They can't imagine anything outside of the box that they're in. That there's no way to elevate past this. This is as good as it gets. And doing so, like, keep them to a certain limited range of vocabulary is the way to do that. So, Juan, what's next, Chance? That homunculus aren't real? Well, we've all seen Joe Rogan. We know homunculus are real and that they come out of an anus. So, Juan, don't worry, they're real.
So, Chance, I want to maybe bring some evidence forward for the echidna being under the Vatican. In a couple different ways. Like we've discussed how, the mother of all monsters, mother of all beasts, the Moab, she's under Mount Etna. And Mount Etna is perpetually getting kicked by the boot of Italy. And so in a fascinating way, and now Rome is like up on the shin of the leg that is Italy, the leg end of Italy. Rome is up around the shin, but the echidna is literally getting kicked by the toe of Italy. But also, if you follow the spear of Saint Michael, it traces over a series of really fascinating castles and sacred locations. It's a ley line, a dragon line, and it cuts right through Rome. It goes right through the Vatican, and then it cuts right through the Echidna Islands, the islands of the Echidna. And so in two different ways, on one end of the toe, there's an echidna getting kicked. And then under the heel, there is literally another echidna islands are being speared by the spear of St. Michael. So all of those are kind of just fun little evidences that the echidna is underneath the Vatican, like literally on a map.
And yeah, the underworld element of all this too. But anyway, Dylan texted me this. He says this is the closest he's ever come to an illustration of what he saw. And it's very interesting that the name of this painting, I don't know when it's from. I'm guessing it's modern because it's got a website at the bottom, but the name of the painting is Queen Gloriana. Queen Gloriana.
Bro, okay.
So this
those
is what
horns,
he saw.
Those are the type of horns. Okay. Oh my God. There's so much going on. Dylan, my man, freaking me out. Okay.
Maybe he needs to just call in. You want a link, buddy?
he could come in because again, here we're seeing like Dylan he's using this scientifically. He's saying it wasn't programmed or impressed onto me in advance. And so it was, he birthed this image. And then he had to go and try it. He had to struggle to find something as close as he could come to it. Well, what is amazing is the nature of her horns here. They curl from underneath, right? The larger ones. They curl from below. They don't come up. They're not obtruse on the top. They're coming from beneath. And that is characteristic of the rams of the Isle of Man. In the Isle of Man, their flag is based on the Sicilian flag that is based on the echidna, the Medusa, the she viper, the she drake, the Moab. There is so much consistency. So for him to bring forward an image with that type of horn underneath the ear coming from below has echoes in the coinage. Remember, we were talking about great queens.
Yeah.
Great queens.
Yeah.
They would have a hood or a bonnet, but it would very subtly have a curl of hair down low under her ear, and that was a horn of initiation.
Let me find that coin we were looking at the other day just to compare.
And now, when we say horn of initiation, we have to put ourselves back in that time frame mentally, because the horn is a cup, it's a chalice, it's the shofar. And again, when we lift the shofar, whether we're going to blow the battle cry of the shofar, or if we're filling up our musket, we lift the shofar because we're filling up the musket, or if we lift up the shofar because we're toasting to the ancestors. There it is. That is an initiation. All things that you lift the shofar upward is a beginning. It's starting off something. It's even you're about to shoot your musket. You're about to blow your load. It's very crazy psychosexual.
Well, and then they associate this with what I think is an incorrect attribution, maybe, but maybe not. They call this Cloacina, which is like Venus Cloacina. They say the goddess of the sewers. So that's the underworld element coming in again.
Damn.
You know, like what did they, there's probably more of this in the past, but there's urban legends of lizard people and mutated alligators and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and whatever in the sewers. And then in the same vein, a lot of this fringe stuff revolves around or gets into deep underground bases. And we just did this Vibrant about the underground tunnels and sewers and stuff of the world. We barely even touched on, a small percentage of them. Right. Cucumber wants to know, what does cloacine mean? It's like cloaca. It's like a sewage or a drain or purifying element. So
it's also
what I think the attribution is that this image on the right is a depiction of the ark and when the world is purified by the flood. And this is the generative principle. This is Eros and his twin, I think that's what riding on the boat, the ark. That's my thoughts. Yeah. I think Dylan's going to jump in though. I sent him the link. That's exciting. We'll get to hear this story maybe in more detail or whatever.
So the whole, this, it's so fascinating to me sometimes how it is both literal and metaphorical. And I like constantly in both worlds, I'm like, oh, here's a literal example. Here's a really great metaphor. And then I'm like finding myself in both of those examples. So like you were saying, deep military underground bases, going into the sewage is the perfect place to hide things. It's the one place people don't want to look, is in the sewer or in the underworld. But then there's something about, like, I always find examples of that which appears to be profane or silly or foolishness is actually counting on you to laugh and change the subject and look away. Because if you can stick with the mystery of it, you can penetrate to deeper levels on the other side. So like one example is one of my avatar pictures is a bust of Zeus, a sculpture of Zeus, but it's flipped upside down. And if you can look at it for maybe a minute, you'll start to realize that Zeus, his nose is upside down. It's like, it is where his forehead should be, and it looks like a cock. And you're like, is this a joke that but it still looks like a face. So it's like his nose becomes a cock pointing upward. And it's like, oh yeah, Zeus was a dickhead. Okay, I get it. Very funny. He was a rapist. He had sex on the mind all the time. You get the joke. But then you keep looking a little longer, and you realize that the entire bust of Zeus's head, it looks exactly like a gray alien. And there's no nose. The nose is actually absent, in that's part of like his ridge line of the shape of his head. In the absence of a nose, but you can still see a little mouth, a tiny little mouth. And it just blows me away that if I'd have laughed it off and been like, yeah, Zeus is a dickhead, I'd have never got to the deeper mystery that there's a fucking gray alien looking me eye to eye the whole time.
I don't have a mute button, so unless I do, I'm on oh no, I do have a mute button. All right, I'm on my daily walk, so I was listening. I've been listening for the whole time I've been working, and I've wrapped up. Man, this is such a good one, but yeah, it's funny because we always talk about witchers, where I do anyways. I think we're witchers. I really do. It's a metaphor. And you talk about the mother of monsters and all that stuff. I had experiences where I was prophesied events. She literally showed me an image weeks before it happened of me and my grandmother sitting beside the sea, facing the east, and she said, when this moment arrives, I want you to ask your grandmother this question. What do you think about life now that you're at the end of it? And then she told me, I want you to cherish that answer because it's the last time you're going to see her. And it was like, I mean, I was bawling, you know, like it was like, I still get like choked up, right? But what she didn't show me is what was behind me, which is like my whole family. And it ended up being this whole healing process that I've told you guys about, I think, where basically my grandmother hadn't mourned the passing of her husband, and my family was worried about her, that something was wrong. And she just had such a beautiful answer about life, and that's why she had such peace about everything, that then they understood that's why she didn't mourn. But had she not done that and told me, I wouldn't have said that. Had she not said, cherish that answer because it's the last time you're going to see her, I wouldn't have had the balls to say that, because when the moment came, when she showed me the moment was behind us facing the east, and it wasn't showing all the people behind me. And so I had to do that in front of a lot of people. It was fucking crazy. So this world is insane in terms of, it's not insane, I should say. It's this world doesn't work the way we're taught it does. There's a lot of things I don't have the answers for, but during my experience, before I got introduced to her or brought to her on that journey, I was tortured for like 3 hours, and I wouldn't all I could describe it as is like, it was like something was trying to evoke me to like purge, to just rip me apart, and I wouldn't break. And the priest next to me, he was fucking throwing up on his knees and shit. And this guy was like a warrior, does it all the time. We're talking about Aya, right? All this shit's going, and I wouldn't break. And finally, after 3 hours, they stopped, and everything, the whole experience got fine. And I was brought in and allowed to, like, you know, talk about whatever I wanted. And she said I didn't have to help people. She's like, you literally can do anything you want. You don't have to worry about any of these people here. It's not your responsibility. But you will be like, nobody's gonna fuck with you if you, whatever you choose, you can do it, and they'll leave you alone because of me. And it's like, well, I want to take down the fucking priests.
So the mother of monsters said that to you, like that you would be safe to choose any path.
Not only that, so my name literally means great tide. My middle name is Michael. She called me Michael in the experience. She referred to me as Michael. And apparently in the experience, I'm her child. I'm like the black sheep. And so while everybody else despises me because I'm not like them, in this experience, she protects me because I'm like her little baby. I'm not like the other monsters. And so that go ahead is what gave me the courage to say, fuck, I'm going to stop doing allegories with Tale of Honora and just start putting this shit out there for people to just get it directly. That's what gave me the balls to do it. Because prior to that, I had another experience, not on entheogens, where I hooked up with this woman. And I'm pretty sure, going back to what you guys were saying earlier about like the agenting Smiths or whatever, there's something dark about this woman, because after that, I had these crazy like terrors in the night that felt like I was being snatched. And it took everything in me to like not have my soul like ripped out of me conscious, like, but it's at night, so it's always those times where like,
I had that happen repeatedly with my ex. I've never told anybody about it.
Really?
My ex-wife, yeah, while I was in that marriage, I had like the night terrors, old hag, like demon in the corner, like trying to get me trying to scream, can't move, paralyzed, like at least once a week that I remember.
That is so freaky. So, and I that's the only reason I don't dismiss people as crackpots, is because I've had these experiences myself, and I wouldn't believe it if I didn't have it myself. But one of the experiences, I got introduced to these mantis beings, and in this world, they basically told me to stop meddling. This was before I had this is like catalyst leading up to me being willing to do Aya, because I was willing to die. I was like, I need to have the like spiritual experience to know what the hell is going on and what my purpose in this whole, what I need to do, right? Because it's like hard, because a lot of us feel like warriors, but we don't have orders. We don't, it's almost like we're like self-sufficient. You kind of just have to go with your instincts and your intuition and
Make it up as you go.
Yeah,
That's what it means to be in, like, working with the creator. Is the creator makes it up as it goes. That's what it means to be a creator. So like we got to be willing to do that.
Yeah, so that scene I wrote in the third Tale of Honora book, it's called The Mantis. That is my real life experience allegorized. And I had this thing. So 2 out of 3 nights I had these crazy night terrors after following this woman. And on the first one, after they were 2 different experiences, but I woke up with a message, like I woke up from it, like got out of my bed, was like finally when the whole ordeal was over, and my phone was just a text saying "sweet dreams" from her, and this was after the first one happened. But it was 2 out of 3 nights, so it had that symbolism of the 2 divided by the 3, and which is the 666 for 0.666 for people who don't know, and then shortly thereafter, I think that followed like a day or 2 afterwards, because I believe this happened on a Tuesday. Wednesday I got the night off. Thursday the terrors came back again in a different experience. Oh, and then doing a podcast over here. And then I think it was on Friday where I got I used to be on Goodreads before Amazon bought it. And I got banned from Goodreads. I'm like probably one of the only authors that's been banned from Goodreads. This is before I really understood the internet. I got a notification, and so it's like basically someone on my end is like commenting on my book or whatever, saying something nasty about it. So I'm going back and I'm like, what? Like, you're trashing my book, but it's like, you could read 10% of it for free. If you think the thing sucks from page 1, why did you buy it and then keep reading? You know what I mean? It's like this whole thing. And then all these fake reviews started coming in while I'm talking to this one person, because the way Goodreads works is like when you go back and forth with people, it's like their whole fucking following sees it. Everybody else it's like this crazy network effect that I had no idea about. I just think I'm talking to like one person. Before you know it, I've got like thousands of people leaving.
You kicked the gamma hive.
Well, no, but it was my fault. I just didn't understand the situation. I should never have even responded. So it was a great lesson. But then, like, the next day, you've got Neil Gaiman. He's got millions of followers on Twitter tweeting about me. You've got all these things. So for, like, years, that's all you saw on...
Wait. The day after that dream, Neil Gaiman... Shut the fucking door, Dylan. Are you serious?
It was either that day or the day after. Yeah, I went viral. Like, I'm like a villain. I'm a villain in like these spaces.
All right.
Like here's his Goodreads page right here, and
what
1.5 star, 1.5 star,
and
1 star.
That's the ones they deleted. So you guys got to realize there was like thousands of fake reviews. Goodreads deleted all of them the next day, and then they still poured on. So what you're seeing is like after they've deleted all the fake reviews, that's still what's on there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, I'm like
it's my
Neil
fault.
Gaiman.
For the record, it's all my fault. I shouldn't, I take responsibility for it. I apologize. Like
right.
We're used to dealing with the fucking Reddit people on YouTube. We're used to being in the trenches on comments.
Right.
The internet, the Goodreads back then was not used to what we deal with on a daily basis in this space.
Tell me what year did that happen?
I believe this is 2016.
Damn.
And what was Gaiman's role? Like, what did he tweet about it?
No, he didn't knock me. He just said like he said like he tweeted the whole situation. He was like, when somebody leaves a bad review, that it, I forget what he said, but it's like it's not like a personal attack or something. So he didn't really like go at me hard, but he brought attention to it. There's no question about it. Like, you know, everybody in the publishing world knew about it. And so that's kind of like, I kind of shot my career I shot myself in the foot. There's no question about it. But that's after that, I was like, fuck all of you. I'm just going out. I'm not going to do allegories anymore.
So the story of your dream was bringing into my mind's eye a scene from American Gods.
I've never seen that.
And I wasn't going to say anything. What's that?
Is that a movie or a show?
It's a series that Neil Gaiman helped produce, and it's
based on comics that he wrote.
Yes, and it's an incredible amalgamation. It's like he's really practicing the art of hypersigils. Every character is in fact multiple related gods baked and reduced down into a single character. So he's really amalgamated every single personality, and then he's woven their fates it's a fascinating series. I do recommend it. But specifically when you were talking about the dream that you would like, and then you woke up and there was that sweet dreams text, you know,
Dude,
there is a scene in that movie where a character, he's from the Middle East. He gets into a taxi cab and it's driven by a jinn, and he recognizes the jinn by the.
I hooked up with the female jinn. What are they called? Jinas?
So then they end up getting together, and there's some sort of like they're having spirit sex, and a fire goes into the other, and it's all fucking Gaiman. It's Neil Gaiman to the max.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neil Gaiman.
It's so crazy. It's so obvious.
For the record, I don't have anything against Neil Gaiman. I'm just
right.
Whatever his name is, you know, I'm not mad at him.
But I think part of the mythos that he's conveying forward there is the idea that there's actually, I mean, we know that there's a spiritual connection to everybody we mate with, but let's imagine, what if the person we mated with has mated with something that is not of the same exact spiritual orientation as us, and they pick up a carry-on.
Well, dude, I hear on MU all the time, there's tons of people that talk about, like, you know, we were discussing the sleep paralysis or like the soul sucking type of deal, but there are, you know, there's lore of incubi and succubi going back forever, and people having, some people even having like ongoing relationships with a particular spirit that visits them at night, and they get it on astrally. So that's definitely the mix. And this is interesting that it's going here, because while we were looking at this illustration that you shared with us that you thought was close to what you saw with the mother of monsters,
she was naked in my experience. Like she didn't have the clothes, but like that dignified, that she looked like, reminded me of like Judi Dench almost. That's the closest human I've ever seen. And when I saw this, I was like, that air, almost that air, like.
Yeah, like that sort of royalty vibe. Well, okay, so this guy has titled his piece of artwork Queen Gloriana. And so I there's something that's just been puzzling me, and I've been trying to find the receipt on for a couple days, where I read in Higgins in Anacalypsis an account he had of an apocryphal gospel, but unfortunately, I don't think he named which one. I've been trying to find it. So this is like a homework project. If anybody out there wants to help out searching for this and could find the apocryphal gospel that references this, should it exist or still exist, maybe it's, you know, covered up or buried or in a vault somewhere. But the account is of Anna, the mother of Mary. So this is Queen Gloriana here. Anna, the mother of Mary, being impregnated by a serpent while she's asleep. A serpent slithers over her and impregnates her, and thus gives birth from this immaculate conception to Mary. and thus Mary is the mother and daughter of God. And so there's more to it than that.
That's the thing with Augustus' birth, right? Augustus Caesar, his mother was impregnated by Apollo in the form of a serpent.
Yeah, and this is going back to the idea of the Neros that I bring up all the time, that the Lord of the Seculum of whatever current world age has always got this lore of the Immaculate Conception behind it. And then so many power-hungry tyrants will even try to like apply that story to themselves. And for example, if you look into the story of Scipio Africanus in Rome, he tried to do this and he got caught for faking it and was banished over it. So there's like, I think Alexander the Great is an example of it as well. And this is a part of why history is so mixed up in euhemerisms and mythological attributes applied to potentially real people, and such a damn mess because it's been part of the priestcraft and the kingship for a long time to try to like grab these traits, these astrotheological traits, and apply them to your life story, or retroactively apply them to somebody who maybe was a eminent benefactor of mankind, so that there's more weight to their maybe their descendants' authority or things of that nature. So anyway, if anyone wants to help me find the story of what gospel it is where mother of Mary, Anna, is impregnated by a snake, and she might have been 3 or 4 years old, like a toddler when it happened, if I understand what Higgins said correctly, and somehow as a 4-year-old carries to term and gives a virgin birth to Mary, mother of Jesus.
That's theology in it all day, Like,
oh, of course.
That absurd shit, it's something else.
Oh, of course. But so anyway, why I find that fascinating, or why I wanted to share that, is because the Immaculate Conception idea, we're talking about spiritual sex, we're talking about incubi, succubi. There could be, as much as there's astrotheology involved here, we could be looking at a blend of mythos and people maybe trying to account for some of these paranormal experiences that are known about and have always been known about.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about often is how different someone would have interacted with the world before technology, before even the ability to send like messages, like a courier system, right? Like you embark on a ship, you may never see your homeland again, and nobody you grew up with will ever know what happened to you if you don't. You know what I mean? Like just the way you would interact with the world like that is so different than anything we can understand. Especially
there would have to be more reverence. Like every interaction would be more significant, important, meaningful. You wouldn't take shit for granted. That's for sure.
Exactly. But you'd also be like superstitious or whatever the word is, because there's so many times where, like I've been out in the middle of the ocean, or not in the middle of the ocean, but like far enough where you can't see land on any side, and I've hit a reef on a sailboat. I know what that experience is like. And then the whole boat is like, and then you like run over to the side, and it's like 6 feet of water with like stalagmite looking things coming up, and you think you're going to die, and there's fucking sharks. You know what I mean? Like that's terrifying. So when you get out of that, it's like you make deals with God. Like if you save me, I'll fucking do anything. You know what I mean? Like it's real easy when you're in these high stress like situations where it's like life or death to have these spiritual experiences. And I don't dismiss any of the accounts that people have, because I've had them myself. It's just not history. That's where my thing is. That's where like I try. That's why I didn't really ever talk about my experiences before, because I don't want people interpreting them as claims on historical shit.
I was talking about the fates today, Dylan, and I was bringing up examples in like our life in modern context of how the fates are still in play. And one example, it reminds me of yours. That you were graced with an opportunity to say the right thing at the right moment, and it was instilled in you just like a prophecy in advance, and then you lived it out. And then
and I didn't get that opportunity with anybody else. It was my grandmother who was the last Caesar, the last one that was born with the Caesar name in my family.
wow. And I love how these things, they happen over the course of so much time, and there's so much meaning packed into them that it takes us so long to unpack it later in life. And like, while we think that we've unpacked it, sometime down the road, you're going to think of one little more detail that was too much with all that you were juggling in the first unpack. And so there's like, it just keeps giving. And I think that's kind of one of the things about the fates, is like when the meaningfulness of an event happens all at once, it's given to us with too much for us to fully appreciate in the moment. And then it'll be years later, in retrospect, hindsight, we look back and we're like, how did I miss this part of the event? Well, it was because there was enough for you to deal with in the moment of it, that later on, the full meaningfulness of it. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of what, it's so big that it needs something, I want to say inordinate, something outside of ourselves to take the credit for it. And I think the fates are a good example of that.
Gabe, Chance, are you two fatalists? I've never asked you this before.
No, not. I actually, the reason why I believe in free will is because of witnessing in myself and others willful ignorance. Actually. Because we see, like, the natural way for things is that ecosystems will balance themselves. They will, homeostasis in the body is achieved. What is needed will manifest or appear. What is too much will be consumed, etc. Like, nature does this equilibrium thing. Yet human beings have the ability, despite every opportunity always being available in their environment and within themselves, to bring equilibrium, that we have the capacity to willfully ignore the ability to balance ourselves, to find equilibrium, to heal, to etc. To me, actually, that is the evidence of free will and not fatalism. To me, the willful ignorance is the evidence of that, interestingly enough. I mean, there's probably other ways you could describe it, but
What
just having this conversation today.
What about that free will, but these external factors that will come, like, fuck you up and block you, even though you're using your free will to do something that you want to do, and they shut the door in your face, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I think there's always a way, and sometimes the obstacles appear, but they are just telling you what the way is, in a sense. But yeah, I'm not a fatalist. I think that there's, it's like column A, column B. I'm a bothist, maybe, that there are elements of our life story that are in some way kind of predestined or pre-planned out. But on some level, I personally think that that there's choice on some level, even with that stuff, even if that choice is pre-current incarnation, pre-life. So, I mean, maybe I just want to choose the most empowering way to look at life, but that's how I see it. I think even there are no victims ultimately, because there's only one mind ultimately. So that's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
That's such a good question. Yeah.
Your turn.
I'm kind of it's interesting that this has come up twice today. But I am a little bit in both worlds. I'm not a fatalist, but I do believe that there is like a general outline of the life experience that we all do go through. So there are rites of passage built into the realm, and so it's incumbent on us to, like, find a good guide or be a good guide for people as they come up on those rites of passage. And those are I think the most noble of jobs is to be kind of like a guide for people in certain, like a driver's ed instructor, or a martial arts instructor, or a minister who's going to help people, get people married. So those things are inevitable, that you're going to come up on those rites of passage in your life. Your first fight, the first fight you lose, and guess what? You've never won a fight. You've never won a fight if you fought, you know. But the first one you lose is crucial. It's crucial because you realize that you know what it's like for both sides. But so to some degree, I am a fatalist, but I think that there are little. That's part of what this cosmology does for us. Is it gives us context for those inevitable rites of passage, so that we can have really strong, solid language to have command in the moment when we come into that experience. And we can be like, this is what my fucking dad told me, that if the fastest way to die is to sleep with a married woman. Now I know what he was talking about. You know what I mean? It doesn't help that he told me it was going to happen. You have to get into the situation and you realize, oh, fuck, am I going to get killed when I go out to my car after work?
I won't even touch a woman that has been separated, that's in the process of divorce, if it hasn't finalized yet. Because even that, I feel like, will bring spiritual.
Right. So, yes. So if you tempt that inevitability, you are fucking with what is fate. So like my point is like, you just don't break these rules. But if you do break the rules, let's say, you didn't know she was married, you find out after the fact, and she's like, guess what? Hubby wants a piece of your ass. Your fate is now sealed. To some degree, your fate is sealed. But if you have the wherewithal to like move ahead of the game and go find him and, come to him and be like, look, man, I had no idea. If you got to punch me right now, but just don't fucking kill me so I could get on with my life. That kind of thing. There are certain things where you find yourself in a fatalistic situation where you're like, what can I do to take the reins here?
You leave a Post-it note under the toilet seat.
Always leave a note.
That's how you do that. Bro code 101. So, okay, well, to tie it back into this episode, though, because this is really important.
That's so funny. Like, if there's another man in this house, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And also, your wife is cheating.
Don't go down there.
She never, and then put the toilet seat down. She'll never know. That's so funny, dude.
If you go down there, you'll start buying leather jackets without owning motorcycles.
So one of our group members shared this tarot card, Nine of Swords, and says that this is the Gemini deacon we're on right now, is the Nine of Swords. And like, look, there it is, the night terrors. So, is that fatalistic that we are even talking about this today? Interesting.
And the monogram of Mary is the 9/11. So if you were to just mirror that and connect it, it would look like the M. If you just type in monogram of Mary in images, you'll see what I'm talking about. But what I wanted to bring up with you guys, though, because it's related to everything you're talking about. So in that fatalistic view, okay, so let's say we do have free will, but there are these weird spiritual laws that we sometimes bring upon ourselves by behaving in certain ways. Well, what about energies, whether spirit guides or otherwise, people you've interacted with that are no longer here, that are still in your space or still in your life, maybe consensually, maybe you never said no, so they're there. And maybe, have you ever thought about the possibility of people that you loved or that may have loved you that stuck around a little bit or whatever, and maybe pushing things away from you because you're not even aware that they're there? And the reason I ask is because this is work that I've done with like psychics and shit back in the day, and like talking about shit like, hey, just so you know, you have this woman with you. Who is this? And my friend who is a psychic, and I don't mean psychic like predicts the future, psychic like sees images around you and can kind of tell you what's going on. And he literally described a girl that I grew up with that died to a T. He's like, she's got blonde hair, blue eyes. And that's who I write the Tale of Honora about. And that's why I always loved that story, The Legend of Zelda, because it reminded me of her so much. And he had no idea. This is before I had written any of that shit. This was like in 2008. And he's like, just so you know, she's still around you, and she protects you fiercely, but sometimes she might be protecting you too much. And that's like work that I had to do. And I just was wondering what your take on that was.
Well, I can answer that. I've had more than one psychic tell me independently of each other that there's an older woman in Native American dress holding like a deerskin drum that hangs out behind me. So I had that verified in a sense because people who didn't know each other and hadn't heard the other one's description told me the exact same description. And I think it's like an ancestor, like a far back grandmother. It may be that I'm probably the first in her line of descendants that has picked up the healing arts again in any way. And so perhaps she wants to like share the inspiration for that, or has something that I'm supposed to learn from her. But I have not really made contact. I've been told by these psychics that I'm supposed to get a deerskin drum and work with that. And maybe that will help me get into the meditative zone. Actually, the reason why I never did is because I was, I was still quote unquote vegan. And that's why I wouldn't get the drum that I was being advised to get that would help me connect with her. But that's interesting. This is coming up because it makes me want to, do that now. What about you, Gabe?
Clinger honors, residual energies. I have a pretty regular practice of not a metaphor. I dance and I sing to my ancestors, and every once in a while, a particular energy or thought or song will kind of sing back to me, and that's how I know that I'm that I'm on the right path. Yeah, I have a lot of spirits that I commune with, some more regularly than others, but I keep it playful. For me, it's a playful thing, and I often think about sending them on tasks, on things to do, and even like giving them a mission while I'm asleep. Like tonight when I go to sleep, I want to think about this. But I don't think it ever, if it happens early in my sleep and I don't remember it when I wake up. You know what I mean? And sometimes in the middle of my sleep, they will come to me and they'll be like, yo, man, that one thing you were thinking about, you were right on point. And this is how you need to think about it from here on. And they'll start to shape my thoughts. And for me, I have a lot of dream premonitions in the tail end of my sleeping. I have a specific phase of sleep where I'm like, okay, this is where I'm getting answers and guidance, and and then I wake up and I try to go back and like make a mental list. I don't journal, but I make a mental list of like, what was I told? Oh, and what was that one thing? Oh, and this other thing. And so, yeah, I do have like certain thought forms that I commune with, and they come back to me and they reward me in my dreams.
What if that's the reason for inverting the perceived nature of reality, is so that you don't tap into this shit, that you don't recognize any of this stuff? Because if you think you're on an infinite expanding world, and you're common, and it's just one little speck in the universe where there's lots of life all over the place, you won't recognize the centrality, if that's even a word. Like, we are in literally a creation, and it just logically follows that something created it. And there's all kinds of, and it logically follows just based on experiencing living matter and dead matter. Like, and for anyone who's ever killed something or seen it happen and life leave that quick, something that was so connected to this world is just gone. And it's just a corpse, and the corpse is just like this. It's not, it just goes away after that. It decays, and it's like that life, where is that coming and going? And nobody can create it, you know what I mean? So it's like, man, I just think the world is literally your oyster once you realize, the nature has been, the perceived nature of it has been hijacked and inverted. I think that's the whole point of it, is to disempower us from connecting with those higher spiritual forces.
I think to really life force energy, however you want to conceptualize that, is the primary grounds of reality. Like my theology, to be frank about it, is that I think life force energy is God. I think that's the same thing. I think the whatever this pleromic pre-existing to matter ordering principle, that which causes harmony spontaneously to generate, I think life force energy is that, you know, the divine spark, whatever, what have you. And I think our life force energy is not just connected to the rest of life force energy, but that life force energy, as it is God to me, as I think it is God, it means that it's whatever part of it you're looking at in a fractal sense, whatever life force energy is in a vessel or in an environment is actually all the life force energy of the all. That's the centrality element you're talking about. Drop in the ocean in a drop type of thing. I think it's all interconnected. It is all one. The singularity is life force in a sense. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I hope that makes sense.
I think that's why there's a yearning to go home, to go back to God, because we are that like fractal one in itself. Yeah, that's what a lot of the mystery schools teach too. When they're not, dealing with all the perversion stuff at the core, there's a lot of that good gravy in there.
Yeah, I think of the oversoul. It's the sun card basically, which has the glyph of the monad, the circumpunct. And that I attribute philosophically, Emerson and Thoreau to the sun card. And they would often speak of the over soul. That was one of their terms of that movement, that thought movement. Well, it just blows me away that today we still use OS in a very significant way in technology. We call it operating system. We still use the oversoul in that acronym. And then we also have the yellow brick road takes us to Oz. There
it is. I knew that was coming. I like what Snake said here too. Who's to say? Maybe we haven't been born yet. Could still be a fetus in your mother's womb, dreaming, creating the world you want to be born in. I do kind of see it that way. I think that it's just like wombs within wombs within wombs. Like we're just womb hopping.
I love it. There it is.
I mean, it kind of has to be because of the containment aspect. Someone who's not like familiar with this stuff might scoff and laugh at that, but it's like you are breathing gas pressure. It's not possible if there's no containment. Poke even a little hole in a tire and watch what happens to the gas pressure, right? It is not the nature of gas to become pressurized unless there's containment. So regardless of what that container is, it might just be a giant fucking placenta.
Are you saying that we're not on a ball floating through an infinite void with no barrier between the ground and the outer space, infinite emptiness?
Yes. Learn how to, for those who don't like it, learn how to use a sextant to acquire an elevation angle, and you'll see it's possible on a curved surface.
You heard it here, folks. We got Dylan. He's a placentrist. He's officially
100% placentrist.
100%.
That's the best thing to describe it, because it is flat, but it's not like it's like literally like paper, but just we're in a horizontal where it's like the placenta. It's like the lying on its side.
It's so profound. It's so profound.
Yeah. Gabe, how are you not a placentrist yet? Placentas are flat, dude. Relatively speaking, they're not a ball. Womb.
So I want to share some of my Philip K. Dick weave from this morning, which is picked, PKD, picked. He's the chosen one, right? So Valis is the name of this operating system, this OS, right? And Valis, I went through just a quick short list. I mean, I didn't even dig very deep on its. So it has gematrological harmony it's a number 18 in reduced gematria. It has harmony with Dallas, Dalis, and Malis. And Dallas has a dark history of malice. I just wanted to point out how Valis rhymes with these two very significant other words. We're taking liberties on the spelling, but the sound is what's important here. Dallas, phallus, malice, this operating system. Oh, and also
Palace, wisdom.
Phallus and palace. Yes, yes.
If you grant me the RL interchange, as you would say, Gabe,
yep,
you get pharaohs.
Oh, damn! And there's the lighthouse. There also is the lighthouse again, the tower of the mind of the philosophers, the lovers of the pharaohs. Really, the lovers of the pharaohs. But so, oh yeah, let me get that. Let me pick that up and throw it back at you. If I can reciprocate your L to R switch, philosophers becomes lovers of the lighthouse of the pharaohs. Philopheros, right? Philosopheros are the lovers of the lighthouse. It's not really
a word, but pharaoh is grain, So.
Okay, right, which is how they make the LSD.
LSD is made from grain?
It's like an ergot. Yeah, it comes from barley ergot, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it was ever a new discovery formula. I think it's probably some kind of remix of Eleusinian
LSD and mystery for sure.
Sensual initiation.
Yes, yes. So even so like Rockefeller has a translation to barley, the barley mill, or the barley stone. The barley stone.
Dude, you guys just made me remember. So the shamans that I worked with, they said they had been, and priests they know were working with these big families. I won't say their names, but you kind of just alluded to some of them doing this Aya shit in their covens, right? To try to influence shit on the astral world, to bring it about on this one. That's what they said to me in private.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It is so, we live in such a profound world. And okay, there are so many things that it's like, it's almost like I don't know, it's like we're constantly pulling scales off of our eyes, in like one that I'm still kind of like I was talking about.
Every time you wake up in the morning, you got to get the crusties out.
Oh my gosh, I do it like 10 times a day anymore. But here's another one. It's like the whole circumcision generating what is it, like reducing your sexual experience by, what is that? It desiccates. It's a desiccation.
There's like millions of nerves being cut off there.
Yeah.
And so my doctor saved me from the knives. He was from Britain, Dr. Wallace. I'll never forget him. And he was saying when I grew up, he was like, oh yeah, he's like, don't do it because even as an adult, he's like, my friend got circumcised as an adult after he'd already had sex. And he was like, he said that before he had gotten circumcised, on a scale of 1 to 10, sex was a 13. He said after he got circumcised, he said sex was like a 3. He's like, he couldn't feel anything as an adult. So he had both. And he said,
yes. Yes, that's the story of Tiresias. He comes upon the 2 snakes and he smashes them, and then he gets a curse where
he stops them from copulating. They're copulating.
Yeah. What's the root of his name? Tyre?
Yes.
Tyre is right there at the beginning. Yes.
Yeah.
Tyre Zeus, basically. Tiresias, Tyre Zeus.
Yeah. He's even the seer of Zeus. He becomes the seer of Zeus because he turns into a woman because he gets cursed, and then he lives for 7 years. He even has kids, married kids, and then he comes upon the same snakes, and some say he just leaves them alone. Some say he just pulls them apart instead of killing them, and then he becomes a man again. And then later on in his life, Zeus and Hera are having an argument over who enjoys sex more. And they use him, like your friend, who was able to actually attest to both ways, before and after. And Tiresias, he says that women enjoy sex the most and men enjoy it the least. And for that, he is made blind by Hera. She inflicts him with blindness, but then Zeus comes in and inflicts him with the ability to be a prophet. He has prophecy. So he's and he comes up in many other people's myths.
Well, yeah, women throughout history did not want us to know that they enjoy sex more than us. That's forbidden knowledge for sure. Right? You heard it here. Forbidden knowledge. That's the title of the episode.
Now, but here's a question: is if the world was uncircumcised, would men enjoy sex more than women? And is there something going on with that threshold of who enjoys it the most? Who's on top, who's on bottom? Right.
What's crazy is circumcision is originally about the beginning and end of the year. So if you look at like when Christ is circumcised, it's on the 8th day, which is January 1st. So it actually doesn't have that perverted cut your dick off meaning to it until.
Is it talking about the intercalary days if you have a 360 day year?
No, it's just talking about the beginning and end of the year, or the end and the beginning of the year.
I just wonder, like, circumcising, cutting off the tip. I wonder about, could that also, if in that threshold between end and beginning of the year, be talking about the intercalary days if you have a 360 day year, but 5 dead days like we see in some places of the past. I don't know.
But why would they choose 8 instead of 5? That would be my question.
Maybe they were wrong. They're wrong a lot. Just spitballing here. Yeah. Guys, we've been going over 3 hours. I don't want to make too long a broadcast.
Dude,
I don't want to scare people away from jumping in.
Thank you for inviting
Don't
me
be sorry. I appreciate the call in. I've been having fun. It's just that I've been waiting for there to be like a natural lull to kind of wrap it up because there's so much enthusiasm up to this point. I couldn't stop us. But
I know what I wanted to tell you before we
yeah, definitely.
I've been working on this post for like a week or two, maybe like a little over a week, about Vulci, which is an Etruscan city-state. And nowhere do they say this is related to Vulcan. But and what's crazy is not one Greek or Roman writer talks about it, and it's one of the most significant. When you look at the archaeological finds there, it's one of the most significant locations in the ancient world, from metallurgy to statue making to pottery making. I mean, incredible. And there's this god that's depicted on one of the tombs called Karun, Charun. If you want to look him up, he's got the blue skin, very similar to what you see in all the Indian mythology, but he's got a fucking hammer, just like Vulcan, and nobody's really making this connection. So when that post is done, maybe I can send it to you guys or whatever, and we can do a show about it. It's fucking.
What's the name of the city?
Vulci. Vulci.
Wow.
And this post is going to be legendary. I can't wait.
Man,
was he associated with volcanoes? Don't know.
I think so, but again, they're not like when I'm digging into the status quo and stuff, trying to get whatever I can. I don't think they've made a lot of these connections. I think it's work that's going to have to be done by the likes of witchers.
I just ask that because there's some possibility that the transition from Etruscan civilization to whatever whatever happened between then and there that they mythologize as Romulus and Remus could have had something to do with a volcano.
Oh, and in this tomb, if you want to look it up, it's Francois tomb. So FRAN, that little C with the squiggly thing that acts like an S or a Z.
Yeah.
OIS, right? Just named after the guy who discovered it. there's all kinds of fucking gravy, and I just lost my train of thought about what I was gonna say about it.
Here's the Francois fresco.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, dude, Rome is allegedly referred to as Rumach. So it's Rumach.
That's Ruach. M and W interchange.
That's exact. You know what? I'm vindicated because I just did. You had no idea what I was gonna say, and you just got it. I don't have to say it.
Lock picking.
Rumach is Ruach. Yeah. Ruach is key row. Ruach is Ray key. Like all that stuff we got into with the key row.
I'm totally shifting my position because, you know, like people like the Higgins and stuff say, well, when you trace down the names of the Greek myths, you won't understand them until you get to learn the Sanskrit, and because a lot of it's hung up in the Sanskrit. And I think that's because a lot of it is all coming from the ancient Italian civilizations, and it's going that way with the conquest of the Phoenicians.
So like Latin doesn't have an affinity to Sanskrit. Sanskrit has an affinity to Latin. I could see it either. I'm at the point where I could see it either way, but like I definitely respect your professional opinion.
Oh no,
it seems like if anything,
I'm not saying I'm right.
There's tons of logic in the idea that it comes from Italy because it's right there in the Middle Earth, Mediterranean. Like there's no better spot to launch a seafaring mercantile empire in that part of the world, period. Or to even reach like all kinds of parts of the world.
Yeah, and why have all these archetypes that are related to the sea if you're in a position that's
we should tell people what ruach means. Sorry, that's the Hebrew word for spirit or breath, right? Am I right about that?
I think it's just pronounced ruach. It's a weird, it's a short, really pronounced, but like
shit, that sounds like rock.
Which is
another name of tire, sir, rock.
And it's
the Lord is our ruach.
For those who want to look it up, it's transliterated as Ruach.
But it's a Hebrew word, and you know it could be made equivalent to the idea of the life force energy, or the breath breathed into the nostrils of Adam. And back to the whole God is life force energy, ruach, hero, all that is like in the mix. I think that's the ancient theology. I think that idea is ancient. It's not like I made it up. I think it's evident. I think it's self-evident in nature if you explore. If you explore the reality deep enough, it'll have been there the whole time, right under your nose.
So, Dylan, with that post, are you tracking the hammer? Is that the artifact you're really honing in on?
I just noticed it today, like really deeply, like. So I'm still working it out. So that's why it'll be fun, like to maybe give you guys access to it or whatever, so you can see it. And what I found out is this. I sent this to Chance. I don't know if he's gotten a chance to see it because he's so busy, but I just learned on Substack, you can invite other writers. They don't even have to be on Substack to contribute to your post, and it'll post their name and shit as a way to like cross-pollinate and like promote other people's work and stuff. So I can literally invite you guys to guest post on it if I wanted to get your take on something, even if it's like contrary to mine. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a really, this thing is like the best platform I've ever seen what you can do on there.
That's cool.
I totally like the looks of it. I just ran into tech issues with it this month that have precluded me from migrating InnerVerse stuff there. But I've been telling Gabe for a while, that's the way he should go. It's not that tech complicated.
No, it's simple.
Not that complex.
Don't even worry about it. If you don't like, you can, there's so many things you can do. You can do video, you can do audio, you can do podcasts, but you can also do articles. It's like, so you guys could literally post your show notes. Imagine how awesome the Marvel Demystifier shit would be. Look in the fucking show notes with like the imagery, and you can put stuff behind paywalls, so you can give like a portion of it for like free, and then for people who are interested, they'll pay, become a member, and get access to it. It's like, it's a way to actually like make a living, and it's been very fruitful for me so far. So I think you guys should get on, because then we can like invite each other to like, hey, I want your take on this stuff. This is right up your alley.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I've got a huge weave. I've never even flushed out. It's like there's all these loose ends on this one around the hammer, but like the family, the Maccabees family, we have a Maccabees revolt, and Maccabees means the hammer. That's their family name, is the hammer. But it also, of course, has the bees in there, which is It's a touchy topic. Bees are accepted in some rituals and absolutely forbidden in other rituals. So I find bees are kind of have this embrace to the Greeks and a refusal to the Hebrews.
Well, the you slipped and said beeves, and to the Druids, the beeve or the bull was highly important to the ritual. You pretty much can't be without.
Right. But then, so we got the Maccabees, and all of these. Here's the thing: is that it's like a signature of the time of change is upon you. So you got the Maccabees, and then you have Martin Luther. Martin Luther, he nailed his 95 Theses to that door. Well, in every depiction of him, every painting of Martin Luther, he's got his hammer. They're always including the hammer in Martin Luther's his biographies. Well, guess what? Martel is a hammer in French. So there's this really strange arc of revolutionaries using the hammer or wearing the hammer as a mantle or as a symbol of this breaking the old, and we're going to reform the new, a reformation. And then of course Friedrich Nietzsche. We got Nietzsche. His whole thing was the hammer.
What if you've just stumbled on a new astrotheological history encode, and again, a lot of these people weren't even historical. They're just like the Vulcan whatever.
Yes, I love it.
All these
these stories need to be generated to explain to people why there's been a change in the seculum or the age. So, why why all of a sudden their world is radically different, or as a way to maybe after a population is moved or genocided and replaced with orphan trains. I mean, we know about orphan trains in more modern times. Is this something that's happened in the past before as well? I don't know, but maybe this change of seculum when they're indoctrinating the public to their new whatever, it's looking at the trans yes. devil, they them. Yeah. There's some element of needing to seed the consciousness with a story that is also supportive of the societal boundaries and borders that they want imposed. I don't know. Spitball here.
And then I got to point out the judge's gavel. And the Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer, But the judge's hammer, I just want people to look up as many definitions to the word order. I've got a 1961 Webster's dictionary, and there's 16 definitions for the word order. And then you look up chaos, it's one definition, one sentence long. But the 16 different definitions of order, all of which are very rewarding and valid. One is... What do
you think of Samson with the jawbone of an ass? Kind of hammer-like.
Looks like he's testing a shake weight. But one of the 16 definitions of order. So when the judge nails a gavel, he's saying order, order, order. So that means secret societies. It means all of the different types of columns, the Columbus family, right? And it also families of the columns. But it also means public silence. He's literally saying, shut up to the populace when he says order, order, order. And so I just wanted to throw that in the mix too. While we're talking about things that hammers mean, there's that ritual of the banging of the gavel and screaming out order.
And they're always
I forgot to say, Gabe, why I brought up Samson at all is because it's in the book of Judges. Oh. And he's called the judge of the Israelites.
That's right. And in somewhere in there, there's the story of the mystery of the lion being turned into honey. Extracting honey from the carcass of a lion, some weird shit around
This was awesome, dude. We got to wrap it up though, because we're gonna keep going.
I know we can't help ourselves.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I had a blast.
Yeah, I'm glad you came to bring the echidna forward. That is so cool, man. That is such a cool
Dylan
story.
batting the cleanup, third hour Dylan showing up. That's always
now
fun.
that I'm like, now that like I'm done with the series, I can like be more free flowing. Like I don't have to have like as much of like a rigidity into what I talk about, because the series is the series. And so now I can just explore other things. So it's easier.
Yeah, I like it. You're living your best life over there, buddy. Good to see it. And I think we're going to get a lot more interesting multimedia content out of you in the near and long future, for sure. All right, guys. Well,
for an idea with the Spirit World podcast, we can just jump on and go through. You guys don't have any idea how much work I've basically published another book on Substack.
Oh, cat's out of the bag. There's a Spirit World podcast coming.
Well, what I'm saying is, we could just go. We can now have. I can just get, because the thing is we can literally just, I can send you my posts, give you access, and we can just talk about, like, we can lump like 3 posts into 1 week and do 1 show a week talking about these ideas, and it'll be a totally refreshing thing. It won't be repetitive because you guys are 2 different perspectives in mine. You know what I'm saying? So just food for thought.
Well, Gabe is everybody's most wanted co-host. So, if he wants to join us for some or all of that, definitely wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
we
man.
have good chemistry.
That'd be a whole lot of gravy, man. Sounds fun. Let's do it.
Okay, we'll brainstorm that. Enough of this shop talk, though. Let's wrap. Guys, check out Slick Dissident on YouTube. Great Tide on Substack. That's Dylan Sacosio. Get our collaborative effort in the form of audiobooks that Dylan wrote and I narrated. Links for those in the show notes. The new one, Holy Sailors, is fire. It is out and available on Audible. Get in touch with me for some biofield tuning. InnerVersePodcast.com/sound-healing. And, other than that, be good out there, because, like, it feels good to be good. Be good. Love y'all. Catch y'all later. Thanks for hanging out with us, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See you.